Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Law-Splaining the Interwebs. I am your host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. And with me today is a very special guest. This is Adam. I don't know if we should use last names and stuff, but
D'Angeli.
Adam D'Angeli. He is a legislative aide in Michigan, and we are here to talk.
I am back on the outside. I am a free agent again.
Oh no! Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a good thing. This is political season right now, buddy.
Oh, okay.
Being a legislative aide is great in the odd number years. Right now, in an election year with the spring going into summer, there's a lot of campaigns to be involved with. I'm working with the congressional campaign. Still work for Rep. Riley on his state campaign, and perhaps one or several additional ones as well. But I assure you, still getting the inside scoop.
Yes. So a former legislative aide, still heavily involved in Michigan, and he is here to help me noodle through some of these news stories that I am seeing coming out of Fraulein Whitmer. That's where we're already starting. Yeah.
You must be. That's the way it works.
Yes, now that she has been called a German name, she is automatically a Nazi. I think that's the standard. But no, we're going to talk about this because crazy stuff's been happening in your state, man. We've got a lockdown that is more invasive than California and New York, it seems. We've got a governor who just moments before losing her executive authority just decided that she would extend that executive authority and just said, well, they can't stop me, so I'm doing this.
Yeah.
You've got a lawsuit that was filed, and then the judge refused to enjoin the executive order, saying that it was unlikely that they would succeed on the merits in stopping it. So that's going to end up not mattering in the short run. It may matter in the long run.
Well, we've actually got at least 3 lawsuits now, and the new one filed today was in federal court.
Right, and
over federal constitutional violations. So these could go any number of ways.
Right, and then there's a big protest with all sorts of big scary men with big scary guns. I've seen the picture of the same 4 guys with guns about 100 times. And there were also
10,000 people show up for a protest, and somehow the same 4 guys make it into every single story. It's funny how that works.
Well, and the best part is there's a news story we're also going to cover where Whitmer says there were swastikas and nooses everywhere because it's the worst, most racist people on the planet. Because only racists protest the coronavirus, because the coronavirus, I don't know if you know this, is a black Jew. It is.
Yeah, if you want your job back, you're a Nazi. That's just the way it goes.
So we're going to cover that. We've got this crazy story someone in my Discord sent me today about a representative named Karen Whitsett. She's a state rep who's a Democrat, and she had the audacity to get over coronavirus rather than dying with dignity. And then because she took a medication that Trump had recommended, she said, hey, thanks for all you're doing to Trump. And now her party is taking retaliatory measures against her.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Heresy.
Right. No wrong thing.
For thanking the president for giving her a tip that may have saved her life, you know? I mean,
exactly.
I mean, what's more important? Acknowledging the life-saving benefit that you received and others may receive, or the party line? I mean, what's more important?
I think we know the answer to that. We know. Oh, and I have a question.
We all do.
So there's a vote day coming up, right, in Michigan?
It is kind of all touch and go right now. The legislature, I think, is convening tomorrow, but what they do is at this point changing moment to moment. Now, typically, the schedule is laid out week to week, and the calendar is even announced at the beginning of the year. It's unusual for them to deviate from it all that much. But right now, everything is up in the air, and the situation changes every single day.
What is the vote for that they're supposed to have? Is it presidential primary vote? Is that what it is?
No, that the presidential primary is over. We had that a month and a half ago.
Okay, so what's the May election about? There's some...
to delay the May election. Well, it's very small. There's nothing substantial on it. It's only a few local millages here and there. It's actually not a major election in any way.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I just saw that there was talk about a local election, and Whitmer's encouraging people to stay home and vote absentee. But I didn't know what the heck the election actually was about.
Well, not last year, 2018, by a ballot initiative, they passed reforms that say that now anybody can apply to vote absentee, which in actual fact they could have all along, because all you have to do is just say, I'm going to say to you that I don't plan to be in town on the election day, and they'll give you an absentee ballot. But they're pushing absentee balloting basically because it encourages Democrats to vote, because it encourages them to not fail to vote. They have a 3-week period where they could be having their arms twisted by whoever so that they don't, just fail to show up on election day.
Sure.
And of course, now with the coronavirus, now they have an even better pretext for that. Now they can call for universal absentee balloting. But the purpose of all this, and really every single election related piece of legislation, is designed for one party or the other, because you can't divorce yourself from the political outcomes of the policy choices when it comes to elections.
Right.
And so that's why Democrats want aliens to vote. They want felons to vote. They want minors to vote. They want the maximum possible voting window. They'd make voting mandatory if they could, which I think they actually did in Australia.
Mandatory voting? You must choose from our list of government people.
You must vote.
I think minors should vote because they're down there. They've got breathing problems. It's hard labor. Minors need to be able to vote. They're pulling the gold out of the earth for us. And
sure.
And
of course, the real reason they want minors to vote is because they don't pay taxes. They don't understand the consequences of huge government. Hey, free college sounds great.
Thanks for stepping on my dad joke. It was a bad dad joke, so I'm glad that you did. It needed to be put down.
You're welcome.
And like Governor Whitmer, I'm pro aborting bad dad jokes. Okay, so we're gonna get into that as we go. But before we do, I want to say, how you doing, man? You alive? No Corona Chan for you?
Oh, I'm great, man. I mean, I was working from home for the most part in the first place, so
yeah.
This isn't a big change for me.
What is the giant picture behind you of?
That is a portrait of John Taylor Gatto. Do you know who he is?
Nope.
And
why is his last name Cake?
His last name, I think it's actually Spanish for cat or
Well, that's
Gatto.
Is it Gatto? Gatto.
Gatto.
Yeah, that's okay. Spanish for cat. Yeah.
You should know who he is, Nick. You homeschooler. He is one of the forefathers of the modern homeschooling movement.
Oh.
He was an award-winning. Actually, I got to meet him before he passed. He passed a couple of years ago, but he was the New York State Teacher of the Year in, I think, 1991. And on the occasion of receiving the award, in his acceptance speech, said, "I'm quitting. I can't hurt children anymore," because, as he put it, no amount of love, compassion, or competency from school teachers can overcome the institutional nature of the public education system. And he authored the first book, which actually was the genesis for me of all my rebellion, was an essay called The 7 Lesson School Teacher, which you can Google and it's easy to find anywhere online. But that was the first part of his first book called Dumbing Us Down, The Hidden Curriculum of Compulsory Education.
Sure.
Then he wrote a longer one, really getting more into the philosophy of teaching. And then he wrote a textbook-length book called The Hidden History of American Education that really got into the deep history of where the public education system in this country came from the industrialists, and for the purpose of creating a dumbed-down working class.
Right, and that's why the public education pushes to the middle. It pushes out the advanced kids and it pushes out the remedial kids, and it just focuses on creating a literal middle class. I mean, that's what they want.
Yeah, it's about a class system, but he talks about so much more as well. And actually, I had a distinct privilege to spend hours with him. I was working on a congressional campaign back in 2008, way up on the Upper Peninsula. And so I got to ride with him from Detroit Metro Airport all the way up, all the way back, and pick his brain for like 12 hours. It was absolutely wonderful. He was a magnificent human being. He just passed away, I think, in 2018, maybe 2017, but pretty recently. But look him up, John Taylor Gatto. Wonderful figure, and his writings are all absolutely brilliant.
Well, I guess if I have
I'll tip the camera up so you can see. That's his face.
If I have to read about homeschooling, I guess I will do it.
Yeah.
I thought I was done with all this reading stuff.
A buddy of mine did the painting too. It was based off of one of his book cover photos, and he was doing a whole series on his influences in this black, gray, and white thick paint. And so I commissioned him to do one for me.
Cool.
And very cool.
All right. Well, I've got a couple chats to read, and then I want to get into the articles. And one of them I'm going to ask you about because Whitmer she's just great. She knows how to use executive orders really well. And she has now created a Corona Chan accountability office out of the blue to oversee the budgeting and expenditures involving coronavirus, which I can only assume, since the legislature doesn't have any say on anything, it's all just executive action. There's no.
You mean there's money involved?
Lots of it. So much so that they needed an office. Idea. They need an office to keep track of it.
Yeah.
So there's got to be, and with government, that's a big amount that you have to have an office to keep track of just that money, right?
Well, I hope they do a better job than they did with their unemployment agency, because that's had a few hiccups here and there. You may have read about that.
I haven't, but we can talk about it for sure, because I would like to know more. Like in Starship Troopers, I'm always clicking on more. Okay, so Freighter J says Governor Whitmore, more like Governor Dimwit. This super chat was paid for by friends of Otaku Trash. Andrew Bin says Whitmer looks like the plastic surgeon from Escape from LA. Does she?
Yeah, someone ought to tell her that makeup is not essential.
Plastic surgeon, Escape from LA.
I can't see your screen.
No, I'm gonna see if I can pull it up real quick.
All right.
I gotta. Yeah, hold on.
I probably still can't see it because I can't see the actual stream with the chats. I only see you.
No, I'm gonna screen share it with you.
Okay, cool.
I'm just getting it lined up. Let's see. People have to give their opinions in the chat. There we go. That's Governor Whitmer, according to that super chat. So I agree.
Well,
shorter hair, a butcher haircut, I think, but otherwise splitting image. Let's see. We've got Weirdo with
similar demeanor.
Yeah, definitely, and probably just as dangerous. Weirdo with a cello says, "Tardy and here to party. What would it take to saturate the election market with opponents for these bleached sphincters? I might run if I get to pants de Blasio on national television." That would be an interesting debate tactic, don't you think? You're like up on stage, and they're like, "Why are you leaving your podium, sir? Sir, this is not the rules that we agreed to." And you walk over, just drop their pants.
Yeah, but going back to his question, because that is serious, because there's people talking about recalling Governor Whitmer. My answer to that is $10 million.
That's what it takes.
Now, first statewide in Michigan, about that. You have to collect enough signatures. You have to have enough money for the media. And that might not be enough, but generally speaking, just ballparking it, if people are serious about trying to recall the governor or any statewide official, you're looking at about $10 million or more. Local officials, state lawmakers, scale it down to the size of the district versus the whole state. And that's generally where you're going to arrive at. But you got to figure petition collecting, and then, of course, the actual effort. And is that going to pay off? Right now, the politicos think no, because according to their surveys, they're saying Whitmer is actually still popular in this state. Now, there's a few problems with that assumption. Number one being that a lot of our types of folks just don't answer polls from total strangers asking what their opinions are on something that to the mass media is heresy. So there is that little bit of polling bias.
No, I read today that the polls aren't biased, that everybody is just fooled by Donald Trump. This is, of course, in respect to the national election, where apparently Biden has been leading Trump since he was announced as the as a front runner. However, everybody, even the same pool of people who they ask who they're voting for, they skew towards Biden, but they all believe that Trump will win anyway. That's the actual poll results, which is great.
What did that tell you? And of course, the polls said the same thing about Hillary over Trump. Much more so this time 4 years ago. But the other point I would make regarding Whitmer and her popularity is that politicians were smart. They wouldn't be asking, what are the voters thinking right this instant? They'd be asking, what will the voters be thinking looking back on all this 6 months from now? Because what direction is popular opinion going to go in? What direction could it possibly go in over the next 6 months? Will people be more fearful of the illness, or are they going to be more upset about the economic damage that is getting worse and worse and worse every single day?
I think for a lot of people, and I'm just speaking for myself, so if you want to jump on me in chat, that's okay. I forgive you. This is the problem that we have. We all have different experiences with coronavirus, and that makes it really difficult to kind of conceptualize how other people think. But I don't know anybody off the top of my head that's been negatively affected by coronavirus. Like, I don't even know anybody who's coughed from it. I mean, I know people who go, I probably had it back whenever, I had that weird cough for a couple days, so maybe I had it. I know people like that, but I don't know anyone who's died. I don't know anyone who's gone to the hospital. And though the death toll is now pushing 60,000 or something like that, or may have even broken it, there's still, that's a lot, but that's also still a lot of people who don't know anybody like that, especially with large concentrations of them being in these major urban areas. Because when you get outside of those, you're not going to see the same results. And when you get outside of New York and New Jersey specifically, you're taking a big step down. Well, Detroit's bad. I should say Michigan in general is bad. But.
Well, we lost a state lawmaker this past month, but was it coronavirus? That we don't know. None of the news stories even conclusively said it was. There was no medical examiner's report. There were reports, they said his mother suspected coronavirus, but I mean, first of all, he was not a particularly healthful individual. He was very, very overweight, and just a really big, tall guy. And we lost a state lawmaker 2 years earlier who died of a very sudden illness. It was, I think, some kind of stomach virus or something.
Sure.
So, but people often just say, "Oh, I guess it must have been that." And that's what apparently a lot of medical examiners are doing too, according to some reports, that they've been instructed to just write off anything that looks like it probably was coronavirus, just call it that. And a lot of people are taking that on faith.
Yeah, and my point in all of this is I am not saying that corona's not bad and not killing people, or that it's a conspiracy. I'm not in that camp anywhere like that. But I am saying that with the amount of people who are getting a direct negative reaction from corona and that swaying the vote, versus the people going, I don't have a job and I need to eat. I think we're going to have a stronger push towards people who, especially come November, when this issue, and looking at corona as an issue, is going to have run its course. Like we'll call it donor fatigue, so to speak, of people paying attention. They're going to have fatigue about the corona story. People already do, but they're going to have a whole lot of it come election time, especially if people are riding this into an election issue. And I think the real issue is going to be, look, man, I need to work. Or look, I built up this massive amount of debt because you took my job away from me for so long. Those issues are going to start to come around and be more on people's minds in November. But I'm not trying to minimize loss for anybody out there who has been affected. I'm just saying that I see a lot of people in my area who have lost work, lost jobs, lost income, lost clients, depending on their type of employment. And we haven't seen a ton of coronavirus effects locally. And I have to imagine that is outside of big urban areas, that's going to be more common than not. And come November, that's going to be a different issue, I think.
Right, except that in Michigan, the urban area is where the Democrat votes come from in the first place.
Right.
The rural areas are all Republican to begin with.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
It's going to be, but it's interesting how, to a large extent, the virus really does cut across some traditional political boundaries. I, on one hand, know some conservatives who are absolutely scared to death of the virus, and I also know some liberals, including family members, who are very much aware of that there are real economic consequences, and that those economic consequences also have serious public health consequences. People that needed knee surgeries and hip replacements that aren't getting them, people that have symptoms that aren't going to the hospital to get it checked on, and therefore that's aggravating conditions. And of course, the general economic malaise contributes to, drug and alcohol abuse and everything else. So there's all kinds of health consequences that we appear to not be thinking of. But the other aspect of it too is with the economy, at some point it's going to strike people of the liberal persuasion that there's not going to be money for those programs that they want when the tax base is shriveled up. Right. Who's going to pay for public education and all these social services that come from tax dollars if the tax money's not there?
That's going to be an interesting issue for any new politician going in. They will be inheriting not just a deficit from the massive amount of spending. They're going to inherit a double dose of deficit from the massive amount of spending and the massive reduction in taxation from the loss of income. That's going to be a really interesting issue. States are going to be in real trouble, I think, next year if they don't somehow find a way to cut spending. And of course, they're not going to. They won't be able to roll back their programs. So that's going to be wild. I don't know what that's going to look like, but
the state to watch will be Illinois because they were in bad shape in the first place.
Well, and even looking at the federal government, we've already spent what would be the projected income tax revenue for this year on coronavirus alone. Like just on economic stimulus, we've spent the $2 trillion that we would pull in through income tax. Plus, factor in a whole bunch of people who are losing that income and aren't going to be paying income taxes or going to be in a lower income tax bracket because they're going to have reduced income over a 12-month period. I mean, it's going to be a really interesting situation with all of that.
Yeah, I wish everything that happens in politics is directly related to the actual policy outcomes, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem to work that way. I mean, there are lots of people who will be impacted by this and still will be placing partisan loyalty over what the actual impacts are, and that's just the way it goes.
Yep, of course. Which is like why people will still buy The Last of Us 2. Skaggy Onside says Governor Gretchen Hitler is really trying to show just how much Michigan is a cesspool. We know it isn't, but she's making Michigan look worse than Michael Moore. Also, not the bees, murder hornets. No. Have you seen the murder hornets?
I have not seen the murder hornets.
They're like,
but to go back to, sorry, no, go ahead.
They're just like, like if you hold your hand up, they're like the size of your palm. They're like 2 inches long. They just landed in the US. They're from Japan.
Oh, great.
So first we get anime and then they follow it up with murder hornets.
So they're in California?
I don't know where they came. Florida? I don't know where they showed up.
Florida is typically the land of the nuclear insects.
Yeah, they're.
But if they came from Japan, then maybe no.
They're nasty. I don't know where they're in Washington State. Yeah, they're 2-inch long hornets. You have to combat them with badminton rackets. That's the only way.
Yeah.
What were you saying about
just going back to Whitmer. The thing that people need to understand about Whitmer, what animates her is her personal insecurity. That's where this need to be a dictator comes from. And it didn't just start with the coronavirus stuff. This has been going on since she first took office. Every single major move she's made has been, how can I tell the legislature to buzz off? And there was, for example, in the budget last year, she vetoed, I think, about $1 billion worth of line items and shuffled around a bunch more money and went out and even said, I know these are popular programs that people want, and I'm going to use this as leverage. She admitted to it. This will hurt people, but this will make me win against the legislature.
Yeah.
And I think an even more embarrassing move was actually even earlier in her term. I think it was in the middle of last summer. The legislature had passed a bill to fund something called the Wrongful Imprisonment Compensation Fund, because back in, I think, 2016, Michigan passed a law that said if you were found to have been wrongfully convicted and incarcerated, the state would owe you $50,000 for every year that you were wrongfully incarcerated.
Right.
And of course, a couple of years later, the fund ran out of money. So the legislature passes a bill to say, we're going to appropriate $10 million so that these wrongfully convicted prisoners, including one guy who was there for 55 years for a murder he didn't commit, could get the money that a state court had said he was owed.
Yeah.
Whitmer vetoed it.
Of course.
And the reason she vetoed it was because she campaigned saying, I will veto any bill that's not a budget bill containing an appropriation. And she had to look like a strong, powerful woman who doesn't go back on her word. So she vetoed a unanimously passed bill to give the prisoners their overdue money, which it got kicked back into the budget months later. So make them wait just a few more months for the money they're owed for the years and years they were locked up, because she had to look tough for a campaign promise. That's just the way it went.
Imagine the tragedy of a justice system where we have to create a fund to compensate people who are wrongfully incarcerated. And the problem is so bad that the fund runs out of money. Like, imagine like that alone is just such a condemnation on what goes on.
Yeah. Well, I think there was an understanding that it was going to take some time for these claims to be processed and so forth. So it was expected, but nonetheless, a court came and said, here, you are awarded this money. And the funny thing is, because when she vetoed this, the first thing I asked was, what else can we do about this? And the first thing I thought was, we got to garnish the rainy day fund. This is before coronavirus, and we didn't think we might need the rainy day fund money for something. How about we garnish the rainy day fund to get these people the money that they're owed? So the way it works in the legislature is you have a team of lawyers who don't work for any one member, but they're in charge of bill drafting.
Yeah.
And so you submit the bill request.
They are the most soulless of lawyers.
I don't know about that.
No, because their souls have been crushed and killed by having to draft bills. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I get that, and of course, they have to dutifully produce whatever any politician of either side wants. But they are actually, in our state anyway, good people, and they actually are typically very great professionals at what they do. But anyway, so they're putting the bill request, and here's what I want the bill to do: garnish the rainy day fund for the wrongfully convicted to get their money. And I get a call back from legislative counsel, and they say, we can't do that. There is no possible way to write a bill that would make this happen. Because under the state constitution, the only way any expenditures at the state can be made is by appropriation of the legislature, period.
Not anymore.
So if you, I'm getting to that.
Yeah.
but sticking to this point, it's funny because if you get a court judgment against you, you can't just say, sorry, I didn't appropriate the money. It doesn't work that way. But the state can say that. Sorry, the state is owed this money. And this has happened. We've had bills where they'll say we're appropriating this budget bills where we're appropriating this money to pay a federal judgment. But if that money is not appropriated, that money is not paid, period.
Right.
It can't be until all of a sudden the governor suddenly now is able to appropriate money that has never been appropriated by the legislature, which I think is one of the key points that some of these lawsuits we might be talking about so need to really be slamming on.
Right. That they can't,
because that is absolutely a constitutional power to the legislature only to appropriate funds.
Right. Right. And we will get into the lawsuits in just a minute. T Dragon says apparently Whitmer broke the 1976 law according to legislator. I don't know what the 1976 law is, but
I can explain.
Oh, well, you just know all of the law.
Yeah, well, these have come to the fore, and so
right.
There are two emergency powers of governor acts in Michigan. One is 1945, and one is 1976. The 76 law has this 28-year time limit and says it does not apply after 28 days unless renewed by the legislature. The 45 law has no such thing. And that's because in their infinite wisdom, the legislature did not repeal the 45 law when they passed the 76 law. So we have these dual overlapping powers of governor acts for emergencies. And the governor, of course, cited both of them in her emergency orders. So the 76 law, without question, does not apply anymore. No doubt about it. That law is gone for the purpose of giving the governor power. So she is now resting on the 45 law.
Gotcha.
Which unfortunately is just broader. It has no time limit. The only criterion it has is can't apply to banning gun sales, which is nice. And it must have what is called reasonable measures.
It's almost like there was something kind of important happening around that time.
1945?
Yeah, I can't think of what would have been going on in 1945 where they might need to expand executive power. Nothing comes to mind.
No, nothing about nuclear weapons kind of happened around that time, did it?
Right. No, nothing.
No.
Nothing.
No. It was for a contagious illness which we had never seen before in our country's history. Never did our founders or lawmakers ever imagine a contagious illness could cause a problem, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that was an oldie times thing where they wrote this constitution thingy, and the notion of a global pandemic was just beyond their scope of reasoning.
They've never heard of a global pandemic at that time.
No.
It's a new term.
There've never been any.
Intimidator0108 says, hey, Nick, how's it going? Apparently, I somehow pissed off someone who doesn't like Vic with the pics I posted on Twitter earlier of the latest tie-beard Corvette. Told him if he doesn't like it, that's fine, but I don't give two shits what he thinks. Well, that guy's an idiot also. I mean, even outside of what you're saying, I saw who it was. That guy's really, I mean, he wouldn't have made it in a public school. He would have been pushed out. Dia Stryker says, my girlfriend went to the hospital and was on lockdown with it. A friend's daughter had it, went to sleep that night and passed that evening. Oh, damn. That is awful. That is awful. Like I said, I'm talking generally about my experience and the people that I know, not really knowing anyone who's directly affected by it. And I have a feeling that outside of major urban areas, that's going to kind of be a normal response, and people are going to have people are going to see the economic impact for what it is. Even I think people who lose someone to the virus now are going to remember the election is 6 months from now. In 5-6 months, be really starting to focus on, you know, what's going on with their wallet rather than what's going on with the virus that they've been hearing about for the past year.
And, you know, it's also a canard that it's a balancing test between the economy and health concerns, as though. First of all, the assumption is that people that care about the economy must apparently just not give a flying rat's ass about all the people dying of the illness. No.
Which is, that's of course silly.
Yeah. We're also thinking about the entire picture. And it's not just a one-dimensional question of should we destroy our country over an illness that is indeed killing people. I mean, we've talked about the economic impact. We've talked about the health impact of the economic impact. What about the national security impact of destroying our economy? There are so many ways that our entire way of life and our country is threatened.
Right.
I mean, never in our history have we tried just locking everybody in their homes and shutting down huge aspects of the economy. In war, we did the exact opposite. No, we need people that work harder than ever. It never has it been, don't do anything, stay home, do nothing, don't talk to anybody, don't see anybody, don't make contact with anybody. And it is uncharted waters what's going to happen with that.
And trying to think, you said something that that triggered a response, and now my brain is losing it. But I mean, the idea. What was it? Oh, dang it! It was good. It was brilliant.
The false choice.
Just be wooed by the brilliance. Well, yeah, it's there's the false choice, and the idea. Oh, okay, I know what it is. It's the idea that if the health concerns of something were the sole concern that we ever dealt with, we wouldn't have sugar, we wouldn't have caffeine, we wouldn't have nicotine or alcohol. We would ban everything in these concerns. We would ban gatherings of people. And when we try these things, it goes really poorly. Like when we tried prohibition, it goes really bad because it turns out that at some point and that point is different depending on the issue. People disregard the law to the detriment of society. Not just they disregard the law in a minor protest, right? Like one guy distilling his own moonshine during Prohibition isn't that big of a deal. But what is a huge deal during Prohibition is when that one guy creates a moonshine cartel that is distributing liquor illegally to a bunch of speakeasies, and then that guy will go to prison forever if he's caught. So anyone who finds out about it and isn't in on the circle gets shot in the face. That's when we start having someone not just disobeying the law and impacting themselves in some negative way, but disobeying the law and impacting society at large. And it's the same with the drug war that goes on now. That model, by the way, is straight out of Prohibition. It's just different people in charge of the illegal contraband, and maybe worse people in charge of it as you look at drug cartels and stuff like that and what they actually do. The biggest blessing to the U.S. is that the drug cartels have a good chunk of their activity in Mexico rather than just being within our borders. But it could, you don't want to be in those towns. Some of them are the most dangerous on earth. So that's my point, is that if we're just focused on health issues, like if you say, well, corona is the most important thing, and you can't consider economic impact and other stuff like that, then you are getting to a point where you're saying, we need to be banning this, 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 and this, and this, and eventually it will erupt in people violating the law in a way that does have serious impacts on society at large rather than just themselves. One guy going out in protest to a public park is a whole lot different than a group of people organizing to go to every old folks home with the virus intentionally coughing on people. Like, that's a big difference. And that's the type of stuff that does end up happening when you start taking away the ability of people to do it, because people don't like being told what to do. It's weird. They just don't.
Yeah, and as bad as the economic impact already is, we're only even just starting to taste what is coming. I mean, the stories now are about the disruption of the supply chain because we've shut down all the restaurants. Now meat is being left to rot, and there's going to be meat. This was stories coming out now. Kroger, one of the big grocery stores around here, and other big grocery stores are limiting meat purchases because there's a meat shortage coming. Can you imagine in the United States of America a month ago, 2 or 3 months ago, there would be a meat shortage?
Every time I go to the store,
third world countries.
I'm going to the store. No, it's fine. I'm going to the store and looking at an empty poultry section, an empty pork section, or an empty beef section. Usually at least one of them has gotten fresh stocks. But I mean, like, they're just empty. And it's like, well, where's the meat? I've never not been able to buy steaks. But now, depending on the store you go to, you can't buy steaks. Or if you can buy steaks, you can't buy pork chops. Can't buy pork chops and steaks, you can't buy chicken breasts. It's just, there's one sector of those meats that's always gone. Sometimes it's two. And that's something I've never experienced in my entire life. Seeing empty sections at grocery stores like this. And I mean, we're well into this thing. By now, we've figured out how to get toilet paper to people. We've figured out how to get rice into stores. But now we're running out of meat. We're running out of milk again, which is weird. Only whole milk, though. But it's a really strange thing to see. Heck, my local tiny grocery store with a really crappy meat section is now selling like full ribeye and strip steaks, like the full, or not steaks, the full roasts of them. So you can buy 190 pound ribeye roast, or $190, not pound. Damn it. We're not in England. $190 ribeye roast, or $180 strip roast. And then you can cut your own. This is a place that barely even sells strip steaks or ribeyes, but they're not selling. People aren't going out and buying them, so they're just selling off like whole sides. It's weird.
Yeah.
But okay, well, let's get into some of these things. What story is your favorite? Is it the Nazi story? I think the Nazi story is funny.
I don't know. I mean, there's more than one.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me.
I'm talking about the protest. I can send you the link that I have.
Of all the protest stories. Oh, there were a bunch of. You know what? Hold on. Let me go to my Facebook page, because there was one I posted, and I was like, this was what I thought was the funniest.
Okay.
So I actually have a record of the one I said this was my favorite. Hold on. I gotta pull it up here.
Can you text me the link?
Yeah, but let me
I can put it
on my own browser window first.
Yeah.
Hold on. Sorry, I know you guys are looking at me staring at my screen here. Let's see here. It'll probably be faster for me just to tell you what the headline is. You can Google it, because it'll come right up.
That sounds good.
Okay, here it is from Vice.com. People with guns and no masks swarmed the Michigan State Capitol to protest the coronavirus lockdown.
Okay, here we go. I've got it.
Yeah,
okay, I'm gonna pull it up on screen for the stream. Give me just a second. I'll click on
I think they have links.
Yeah.
I think they have a link somewhere to the previous one on the previous protest, which was also very funny, which was also from Vice.com. The headline was Michigan Governor, go ahead and protest the lockdown, but you might get coronavirus and die alone.
Okay, I've got this one pulled up. I used my handy, I sometimes accidentally dox my Streamlabs screen, and the sources for this one is iDubbbz is a cuck. I just want to point out that I've left that label as it is timeless and priceless. It will always be true. So we've got it pulled up here. Let me zoom in a bit so it gets there. That's maybe a little bit more legible for people watching. It says people with guns and no masks swarm the Michigan State Capitol to protest coronavirus lockdown. Some state legislators, anticipating the possibility of violence, had even come to work that day wearing bulletproof vests. So then we've got these guys. And they look at this guy that they have right up top. He's got a mask of an American flag. So no masks, guns and no masks. And then they put a guy with a mask on there. That's good.
Yeah.
Two of these guys are in bandanas. This guy's got his bandana pulled down.
The scary mask.
Right. Not a medically approved mask. Of course. By the way, I was at Walmart the other day, and I was walking by the area where they have the gun counter, because in Minnesota Walmarts can sell shotguns and stuff like that, and I had to hear a guy lecturing the poor Walmart employees, and I actually felt bad for them about how useless their masks were. And he's like touching their masks and stuff. He's like, look, see, this got a gap in the side that's not protecting. You just put your finger on his face. Leave this poor Walmart kid alone. Like, he didn't do anything to you. Here you are. His boss told him to wear a mask. That's all he's doing. But oh god, I felt really bad for that kid. So we've got hundreds of protesters, including heavily armed men.
How many?
I don't know, but their arms do look heavy. They've been holding them up all day, and now they're heavy. Crowded into Michigan State Capitol building Tuesday as Republican House legislators were voting to sue the Democratic governor over coronavirus lockdown measures. Some legislators anticipating the possibility of violence had even come to work that day wearing bulletproof vests. Earlier in the day, notice, are there any... It's this picture every time. I swear, the tweet from Senator Dana Polhanky.
Polhanky, yeah.
Her name is Polhanky. Come on. That's like God being mean to a woman whose name is Polhanky. Like, that just should never happen. It's always these four guys. I've seen this picture in every single article. Are there any pictures of the legislators? And no, of course not. No legislators in bulletproof vests.
No.
And this is what I was noticing from the article I have is from CBS News over the same incident. And I'll pull that one up in a second and show you guys that it's the exact same picture. I wonder if I can just slide it into this tab and have it pop up. Yes, I can. So this is Michigan governor says some of worst racism fueled protests over coronavirus response. There it is. Same tweet, same picture from Polhanky. And no pictures of the alleged acts, which we'll talk about in a minute. Okay, but back to this thing from Fox.
I do want to talk about her comment too, but let's go back to the article.
Yeah. So earlier in that day, the demonstrators, many in MAGA hats, or carrying signs promoting QAnon slogans or bizarre coronavirus conspiracies, stood outside in the pouring rain by the Capitol.
By the way, I have no idea what that's even in reference to. It's funny this reporter seems to know what QAnon slogans are, because I don't.
Oh, well, you don't know all the QAnon slogans? I mean,
no.
What kind of patriot are you? I'm just kidding. I don't either. That was just a joke. So it was raining, though. Was it pouring rain or was it drizzling?
It was indeed pouring. It was well, I mean, it wasn't a downpour, but it was unpleasant. There were some folks who wanted to collect people's names and emails and things like that, and it could not be done because it was too rainy.
Sure.
It was indeed raining.
Hours later, the group, most not wearing masks, moved indoors and crowded into the hallways where they jostled for space and demanded to be let into the legislative chambers. How dare the peasants? How dare the peasants think they get access to the legislature? Oh my goodness.
You know, there's a little blip here that's been glossed over, because in a lot of other stories and comments, they say they stormed the Capitol. Mm-hmm. It didn't quite go down that way.
No, you don't say.
What actually happened was they were all let into the Capitol one by one as they had their temperatures taken. Oh. Including the guys with guns.
So there was no issue with that. They willingly submitted to having their temperatures taken. I assume with like a temporal thermometer type thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you wouldn't want to be shoving the same thermometer in everybody's mouth. They could share rectal thermometers. I don't know. Does coronavirus pass rectally? Are you familiar?
I don't know. But I heard that Anthony Fauci said that AIDS was transmitted by saliva in the mid-'80s. He was promoting that theory.
Maybe it was only rectal saliva.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what Fauci's into. but they also
but the point being, every single one of these people that went to Capitol building did so with the consent of the Capitol Police.
Right.
All of them.
So there was no storming done. It was
no. It was there was a lot of bleeding on Twitter about why weren't they all arrested? Because they didn't break any law. That's why.
The chat is letting me know very forcefully that it is indeed spread rectally through fecal matter. So, if you listen, guys, avoid anus to anus contact. I want to point that out. It's very dangerous in a time of Corona, Chan. It's like that.
But is it through the saliva? Is the question.
Yeah, can saliva to rectal transmission occur? I don't know. One reporter covering the protest was accidentally hit in the head with a rifle. She's fine, but was shocked by the lack of attention to social distancing. What was she doing standing there?
Yeah.
I mean, social distancing, it's a two-way street, right? Like, if I need to get past you, I wonder what the story on that is.
Well, and I'll tell you, at the first rally, there was a small one on April 7th. And everybody was being meticulous about social distancing. In fact, one of the attorneys, actually, Lucas Gerhardt's attorney, had said, everybody bring a tape measure. And he was there with a tape measure extended out to 6 feet. And we were like, jousting with each other with these 6-foot tape measures, going, making sure we were all, and there was zero police problems whatsoever. April 15th was the huge rally, most of whom overwhelmingly were people that never actually even left their cars. They were just driving around the city honking and yelling and waving signs out of their vehicles.
But how many guns did they all have? Like all of them, on average. The average amount of guns. Please don't give me a number less than 10.
I couldn't look inside their cars, so I couldn't tell you.
How many minorities were dead in the back of their cars?
None.
On average. Just on average, though. None? That's per capita.
No,
though.
I'm not aware of any. Not aware of any corpses in the trunk.
Okay.
But anyway, that first huge rally, April 15th, that was the one that really set off the firestorm everywhere else. That was the one that kicked off Capitol protests all across the country and the world. In fact, one of the greatest things about that rally, I got a message from a friend of mine who was there who said, "My friend from Romania contacted me after he had seen that, and he said people in Romania saw those people out there honking and yelling and people at the Capitol screaming and yelling, and it was like it broke the spell. Everyone started breaking curfew. After the entire time they were just sitting at home staring at four walls, they were like, yeah, fuck it, let's go out and do things."
What's funny is we take the American freedom spirit for granted. But in countries that haven't had it or historically have been under some sort of, communism, socialism, or, some sort of oppressive regime, like they don't know to just say no, right? Like they didn't have the DARE program. Just say no to government. They don't have that. We do because we're founded on it, and we kind of talk about it all throughout school. We know that at some point, Americans will eventually, like we all hear it, right? At some point, we'll all rise up with our guns and overthrow the government. That's an option on the table. But for countries like Romania, it's not as much. You overthrow a foreign usurper or something like that, but your own government. I mean,
I had a call today actually from a reporter for Australia's 60 Minutes, and she was saying, "Yeah, we don't demonstrate like this in Australia." And I'm thinking, I don't know if I entirely buy that, because I've seen protest photos from at least European countries, maybe not from Australia.
Well, Australia, the last time they protested the amount of emus that were kicking their ass, and they lost.
Yeah. Yeah, they submitted quietly to having their guns all taken away. But I mean, there was the Catalonia protests, there was the protests in France this past year. There have been lots of protests. And by the way, I don't know that necessarily protests are always the most effective political tactic. I think at this moment it worked so well because everybody was just so shell-shocked and in a state of fear that, like I said, it just broke the spell.
Yeah.
But that April 15th protest, people were still mostly being very cautious. Most of the protesters were just staying in their cars. There were maybe 500 or so that were on the Capitol lawn. And by the way, the media lied about social distancing and that too. It's funny. I actually got a text from my mother. She said, "Is that you in this photo?" And I looked at this photo, and everyone was like, looked like they're all huddled together, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed there were these daffodils in the foreground. And I recognized those daffodils. The reason I recognized them was because I was noticing how well manicured the Capitol lawn was, even though we're not allowed to cut grass in Michigan at the time.
Right.
But somehow the Capitol's lawn was well maintained. Anyway, it was important because those daffodils were at this statue of a former governor during the Civil War era, about 200 feet from the curb of the street and about 200 feet from the Capitol steps. And as it looked like in the photo, everyone was slouched together. And I realized this is a long lens shot that's making us all look crouched together. So I asked her, where'd it come from? She said, BuzzFeed. I took the photo, did a reverse image search. I found the original was at the from the BBC. In the original, you could see it was shot from the Capitol steps, looking way down Michigan Avenue. You could see the statue. You could see a cop in the foreground right next to other people without wearing a mask that they cropped out, of course.
Right.
They were manipulating the photos to make it look like people were more close together than they actually were. But all that said, this last protest 6 days ago, people just gave a fuck. I mean, they were largely not wearing masks. They were getting close together. And you know what, though? It's not that people aren't afraid of the illness. It's that I think they have a compelling reason to say, we are not afraid anymore. And not that we're not afraid of the illness, but it's more important. It's more important that we defend our liberty. And we're not going to be bullied or browbeaten or intimidated. And as much as we'd like to be socially distant, there comes a point where people have to say, we can't do this anymore. We have to still be people. We have to acknowledge the enormity of the damage that's being done by this instantaneous destruction of our civil society. And it's worth more to make a statement to go into the Capitol than it is to just be safe.
I have to say that you must be a savant gardener. Like, you are noticing the meticulously manicured lawns, and you're like, I recognize those daffodils. I know that you've got a, just in case the legislature thing ever doesn't end up working out, you'll be like the flower whisperer. No, I'm kidding. But no, of course, BuzzFeed is trash. And that is a universal truth. Everyone will always know. Yeah. BuzzFeed is absolute trash on everything that they do. And yeah, that's the problem with this. Like this article, you know, the headline is that many without masks, and in the picture, we've got 3 guys, 2 of them wearing masks, and one of them with a mask that's just pulled down for a moment. Like, wait. But they want to show these tactical vests. That's what they want, right? Like, that's the scary thing that they're trying to do here.
The other thing is, you get beat up either way. After the April 15th protest, we had liberals on Twitter saying, "Oh, look at these people wearing masks. Obviously, they understand the virus is real. They're a bunch of hypocrites." And then you also people saying, "Look at these people not wearing masks. They're spreading the disease." Yeah. You know, so you can't win either way. So what's the point of trying to put up a good appearance?
So here's the...
It's not like anything that could possibly happen was going to get the media to not cover it negatively. Nothing.
Right. Yeah, of course. So while the protest was happening, back to the article here, the Republican-led Michigan House voted against an extension of the pandemic-related emergency declaration and prepared to sue Governor Gretchen Whitmer. The right has villainized her for the steps she's taken to contain the spread of coronavirus in Michigan, as they draw the halo around her picture, right? Some of the protesters even chanted, "Lock her up." And when Republicans came out to tell the crowd about the outcome of the vote, the demonstrators cheered. How dare they cheer? Thursday's American Patriot Rally was organized by a group called Michigan United for Liberty. Facebook removed their event page for the protest last week.
Yep.
Wow. Why? Any
you haven't heard?
No, I have no idea.
Oh, Facebook announced this. They said they're going to remove all demonstration events.
Oh.
Because
I thought Facebook was the one platform that's like, you know what, we're not going to get involved in the politics of things this year because it's an election year, and we're going to let everything kind of just, sit. We're not going to take the policies. But of course they just took it down.
Well, according to Facebook, these events are illegal, which is funny because, as you understand, legality is a conclusion.
Yeah.
And Facebook is unilaterally determining that this question that is actually in play in the courts is, oh, no, everything the governor says is the law of the land, right?
Is shockingly.
They have taken that legal conclusion to be all it takes to destroy people's free speech on their platform.
When the founders wrote down that you have the right to peaceably assemble, they didn't include any restrictions on that right, because they knew that if the government could say you have the right to peaceably assemble except right now, then you don't have a right to peaceably assemble. You have permission to peaceably assemble. And over and over and over again, groups that peaceably assemble have won, even without permits, even without all sorts of things, that so long as that assembly remains peaceable and doesn't interfere with, the lives of people in a meaningful way. Like if you're gathering on a public property like the Capitol building, there's almost nothing that the government can do. And if you want to look up time, place, and manner restrictions, yeah, time, place, and manner restrictions are a thing. But if the time, place, and manner they say by executive order is never, then that's not a meaningful time, place, or only when we decide that Corona has passed. That's not a meaningful or narrowly construed time, place, and manner restriction. And the manner would merely be to observe social distancing and to do things like submit to a temperature check before you enter the building. That's an impermissible, normally, under normal circumstances, it would be an impermissible infringement on your privacy to temperature check you as you walk into a government building. But because of the coronavirus, we've accepted that as a permissible manner restriction on the peaceable assembly. Like, well, let's at least try and make sure these people aren't sick while we're doing this. But saying that the time is never and the place is nowhere, that's not a meaningful restriction that can be enforced by the government, and it will eventually lose on a constitutional challenge.
Yeah, and that decision from the Court of Claims on the preliminary injunction, which maybe we'll get into soon, about where they say, well, but it's all temporary. That's not defined. There is no, and by the way, just so you all are clear on this social distancing stuff is not going away anytime soon.
Oh, no.
The illness will pass, the economy will maybe eventually recover, but social distancing is not going to go away if there isn't hardcore public pressure on an ongoing basis to say, no, we will not accept this. You will never go to a concert again.
Yeah,
if we don't clear this up.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to get to that Whitmer said in the article I've got with her calling it racist or whatever. She basically, or no, it was with the, I think it was in the article where she was, I've read too many Whitmer articles, so I'm going down the rabbit hole. But I think it's in the one where she said, where she created the Office of Coronavirus Accountability. She basically said that she admitted that Michigan has hit a plateau in cases, and it looks like they're leveling off. But she flat out stated, it's when states reopen that second flare-ups have occurred, implying that she wants to avoid a second flare-up. So literally, when could Michigan possibly reopen? Never. I mean, under that standard, never, because when you reopen, you're going to have a spike in cases is the going thing. We're not getting rid of this virus. It's not going away. And the likelihood of developing an actual vaccine for it that's functional is not very high. We don't have that many that actually work. And we have vaccines that work, but they've been We've been
Even
working
if it
on it for
does,
a long
they'll
time.
be like, oh, well, there might be another virus sometime.
Right. Exactly.
They will not let this go.
It's a mess. Okay, so Facebook removed the page. Its members had organized one of the first anti-lockdown protests on April 7th, which was much smaller in size. Since then, more than 90 anti-lockdown protests have gone down in 46 states, according to an analysis by Vice News. On Wednesday, a judge had ruled that Whitmer's measures were constitutional. That is a lie.
That's correct.
Vice News has lied to you directly. That's frustrating. The judge refused to issue a temporary injunction on an order. Now, there's a high burden to get an injunction on government activity, especially one that is to presumably protect the safety of the public. Okay, so that high burden is that you have to show that you have a likelihood of winning. Now, the judge has said, and this is the problem with that injunction, the judge has said that there's no likelihood of winning based on the complaint. First of all, that's kind of ridiculous, but it's also realistic in a way, because the likelihood of prevailing on this is at the appellate or Supreme Court level. Like, this is a big case, and a district court judge they don't have the authority. And when I say authority, I don't mean like their authority. You don't have the authority to back up your position, because we don't really have stuff like this happening throughout history and a bunch of decisions that you can cite to slap it down. So it's going to be hard at the district court level to say that this will get through, even if they're likely to proceed and win on the merits at appeal or at the Supreme Court level, when they're really dealing with a novel constitutional issue as we have now. So this is just a flat out incorrect statement. The judge did not rule that Whitmer's measures were constitutional. The judge merely said that the plaintiffs were unlikely to succeed on the merits at the district court level and refused to issue an injunction. This issue has not been heard by the judge yet. Not at all. This is just based on the initial pleadings and the request for temporary injunction. So,
right.
God, I hate Vice News. I hate them. And I blame you for making me read this article.
Well, I picked it because it was the most ridiculous.
Right. And this is just flat out bad coverage. She wanted to extend the emergency. Go ahead.
And by the way, it's actually in a way good because of how absurd it is. The hysterical, vitriolic, nasty, slanderous news coverage that we get from sources like this only underscores how effective the protests are in the first place, because it shows how afraid of us that they are, that they let this get under their skin, and that they react with this hostility. The governor's outbursts about this and calling them all racist and blah, blah, blah. That's all to, in effect, show how effective they actually were, because anytime a politician or a member of the political class, and I consider the media part of the political class, tells you something, the first question...
The stream is really laggy today. And I hate it. I hate that it's lagging. But you and I have a good connection. Just a second. Let me tell you. Stream is screwed. YouTube has no idea. YouTube can't handle the stress. It's still going. Not my internet. So just so everybody knows, because we're back up now. If you're having buffering issues, I know there's literally nothing I can do about it. It's not on my end. It really isn't. But a whole bunch more people are watching YouTube, and even because they're home right now from Corona Chan, they're home from their jobs. And so there's more people watching it. And then as a side effect of that, even as people return to work, more people are getting hooked on things like YouTube that they weren't already watching because they've had nothing else to do. Now they're discovering the internet for the first time. And you think that's probably a joke because you guys have been on the internet for a while, but I'm telling you it's not. People are realizing this is bad for cable companies especially,
Oh, yeah.
People are realizing just how much internet there is right now that they have not been consuming, and they're consuming all of it. So I apologize.
And not only that, but the other problem the media has with all this, because they're all on the side of the lockdown, is that they are laying off people left and right, not because of low ratings, but because the advertising money is all drying up. This is terrible for the media.
Right. Good. Hope they burn.
Yeah, me too.
Also, I'll let you know that Adam and I's connection has been stable the whole time. So, like, if YouTube does hiccup, I apologize. There's just nothing I can do about that. Okay. Let's see. Let's get back to this article and finish it up here. On Wednesday, a judge, she wanted to extend the emergency declaration, which expires late on Thursday, for another 28 days. The vote won't impact Whitmer's stay-at-home order, however, which remains in effect until May 15th. Governor... Yeah, which it's
is that a fact? Because the legislature says no. We're saying the order is expired.
I hope you understand that Governor Whitmer will decide otherwise, my friend. And there's nothing that the legislature can do about it because she's just ignoring it.
No, well, the question goes then to enforcement. First with law enforcement, and then ultimately with these cases going to courts whenever that actually happens, which will be after this is all over.
Right.
So,
and that's the downside of our court system, is that it does, to get these important issues, you're going to have to wait, and it's going to all look like it's fine. And that's going to be the first impression for most people. And then 5 years from now, when these cases get to the Supreme Court, it's like, oh yeah, remember that coronavirus thing we all had 5 years ago when everything was locked up, and you've all gotten used to the fact that there's no retail stores left and everybody's unemployed. But that was all illegal. Sorry. That's how that's going to go. And a few people are going to notice that the Supreme Court ruled on it, and everybody else is just going to assume, well, of course it was legal. They locked us all down. And it never stopped.
Yeah, this might get reviewed a little more expeditiously than some other cases, I have a feeling, but
I hope you're right and I'm wrong. I do.
I guess we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah. Like, I want you to be right.
The case that you reviewed the other day, the case that you reviewed, the Michigan United for Liberties lawsuit, they've filed for emergency consideration on that case. So we'll see how that goes.
Is that in the Michigan Supreme Court, or is that one going to the U.S. Supreme Court?
That one is filed in the Court of Claims, which is the same court that ruled against a preliminary injunction, which for non-lawyers and even lawyers, actually, Viva Frey did a video about this, and he says, "I'm Canadian. I don't know what the heck a court of claims is. It might be unique to Michigan.
I think so.
It might be unique to our state. It's a court of original jurisdiction, but somehow in the state appellate court, and it is a court with exclusive jurisdiction only for lawsuits against the state."
All right, so I can help translate that a little bit for the chat. A court of original jurisdiction has either a constitutional authority or a congressionally granted authority to assume jurisdiction over particular matters. For example, the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction over cases involving the United States or certain high appointed officials of the United States. So that's not going to go through you're not going to get the president of the United States in a district court. It's going to be heard by the Supreme Court or an ambassador of the United States. If you're suing an ambassador of the United States, that's going to be in the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. That's under Article 3. Now, Congress can also grant different courts original jurisdiction, which is, I'm guessing that's what the Court of Claims is it's probably but maybe it's in the Michigan Constitution. But I'm guessing the legislature of Michigan has created a court of original jurisdiction over certain claims where you're challenging the government, because their lower courts are just not equipped to handle that sort of case, and it's a big thing that's going to probably go to the appeals court anyway. So what they want to do is they want to have a higher court immediately review this topic rather than having a district court screw around with it. They want to have a different level of review, and you don't need a jury on something like this, right? You need a panel of judges to hear it. So that's what original jurisdiction means, and that's a good thing. That's cool. I didn't know that Michigan had that, and that's a great thing. Although I'm mad at them already. I'm already mad at the Court of Claims.
Well, they've already made a bad decision. And by the way, that injunction denial was from an Engler appointee. That's a Republican governor from like 16 years ago. So
yeah.
If the Republican appointee says that, it's already a bad sign of where things are going. But any of these cases might ultimately end up in the U.S. Supreme Court anyway, because they're that important. And today, a case was filed by actually a retiring congressman, and this was in a U.S. district court for the same basic issues. That was the Mitchell case, which I think I sent you a link to that.
Yep, I've got it. I will pull it up on the stream in a little bit, and maybe we can talk about that one too. For now, let's finish this Vice article. It's my fault that we haven't, because I like chatting. Okay, so Governor Whitmer understands that this is a frustrating time and that many people are angry. I hate how condescending governors are. We understand does the Michigan governor have a special mansion that she gets to stay in that's the property of Michigan that she gets to live in while she's governor?
Yes.
Yeah, same with Minnesota. I understand.
And she actually does live in that mansion, too. The previous governor did not. He never used it. She lives in that mansion. That is her workspace and her living space.
Governor Whitmer understands this is a frustrating time that many people are angry. Her office said in a statement. Not even her office sent it out. The governor supports Michiganders' rights to free speech? Nope. And the right to protest? Nope. But those participating should not put themselves or first responders at risk. Literally going against the statement prior to it. I respect your right to do this, but don't. It's disappointing to see people congregating without masks and without practicing social distancing, it added. Now, remind you, this is from an office. Like, this is a faceless group of people who are accusing you of being disappointing. This kind of activity will put more people at risk, and it could mean that more people will die. There's that good old fear-mongering. Got to have a little bit. Yeah. Look, protesting the goodwill of our governor is death. Guns are allowed inside the Michigan.
I understand you have these rights, but you're just killing yourselves and everybody else. So stop it, because you're murderers.
You're hurting the children.
But I respect your right. I respect your right to do this, because I guess I kind of have to. But I just want you all to know, I think you're all murderers.
Yep. Guns are allowed inside the Michigan Capitol, which has no metal detectors, but protesters aren't allowed to carry signs or posters in case they damage the historical interior. That's funny, right? Yeah. Like, look, a gun can't damage the interior, but a sign or a poster might. Michigan has the third highest death toll from the coronavirus in the country. So far, 3,800 people have died and nearly 42,000 have gotten sick. The U.S. hit a grim milestone on Wednesday, surpassing 60,000 dead, which is very tragic. It is. I mean, there's no way around it. I wonder, and this is just me musing, I'm curious what the flu death toll will be for this year.
I wonder if it'll be a lot lower than usual.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like, and again, not part of some conspiracy or anything like that, but if people are dying from coronavirus and they're vulnerable populations that are similar to the flu, well, that's just less people that would die from the flu with the same vulnerabilities. So I'm not suggesting anything. People jump on me for this topic, so I have to like add caveats, but I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just literally curious if there will be a decrease. Maybe there won't be. That would be really, really awful. But I'm curious what that will do to these other causes of death. Like, will we have less heart disease deaths as well? Will we have less lung cancer deaths? I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Well, there have been documented reports that medical examiners have been pressured to assign any case that is even suspected of being a COVID-19 death as COVID-19.
So Spectrum Ball says, check the damn CDC numbers. They revised them to 37,000 confirmed. All other numbers are presumptive. They're just saying they died of it without actually knowing. CDC coronavirus deaths. I don't, I don't know where to find this.
Well, and This is where, as a political operative, I'd say don't bother, because this is not the kind of discussion that ends up helping anyway. Because if someone says, I think everyone's dying of coronavirus, and you say, no, I think they're not, then you're fighting over a fact that you're never going to be able to truly resolve, because everybody's numbers are going to be, everybody's sources are going to be in question, and people aren't going to believe one another. The way to be effective in helping people overcome the fear of this is to get around that, not directly confronting what they're saying is the problem, but point out there's all these other issues that are also every bit as serious. So
let's see.
Say it's true. Yeah. It's true that the CDC's numbers are absolutely 100% accurate. That still doesn't make what's happening right now good policy.
Let's see. We've got, I've got Chris Saliza from CNN Politics saying that you're wrong.
Oh, boy.
You're wrong, chat. This is CNN Politics. They're telling you you're wrong. I'm going to bring this up on screen. I want you guys to be BTFO'd by CNN. So, you know how this goes. CNN knows. Over the weekend, a fact, in quotes, about the Center for Disease Control and Prevention downgrading the number of deaths to 37,000 went viral. Did I read this wrong, or did the CDC just revise the national COVID-19 deaths to 37,308? Tweeted Tim Young, who identifies himself as an author, host, and comedian on his Twitter bio. He was wrong. CNN says. Soon the idea was everywhere on the conservative side of the internet. Only the conservative side. CDC was openly... I want to point out something. No matter what you believe, no matter what is true, this is political. And that is really damn important. Because you literally cannot trust the facts coming out of your government's office, because your government, Republican or Democrat, it is a political issue in an election year. I think that's what you were kind of saying just a second ago, right? Like, let's say the CDC is right. These are, all of the sources are politically motivated at this point. And this is a political issue. It's no longer a fact issue. We're outside of the realm of facts. We have my facts and we have your facts. And everybody's telling you this. For many conservatives, the story was too good to resist. The only problem, the story wasn't true, because the link Young sent around takes you to this page, headline provisional death counts for coronavirus disease. And yes, on that page, you will see that the total number of deaths from COVID is listed as 38,576, which is a whole lot less than 68,285 deaths being reported from coronavirus by a Johns Hopkins University Center for System Science and Engineering. But you only need to read the text on the page to see what explains the discrepancy. And here's the key bit. Provisional death counts are based on death certificate data received and coded by the National Center for Health Statistics as of May 4th. Death counts are delayed and may differ from other published sources. Counts will be updated periodically. So the numbers that Young and others were peddling as evidence of some sort of revelation about the real death count were, in fact, numbers the CDC acknowledges are weeks behind the... It doesn't say weeks in this place, by the way. Like, I just want to point out that the thing that they're saying doesn't actually say weeks. But, yeah, weeks behind the actual mortality number. Coronavirus has laid plain just how big a mis- and disinformation problem we have in the United States. Stripping of context from facts in order to weaponize them to score partisan points is a war in its own right, and all of us are potential victims. No, you're not a victim.
This is CNN saying all this, right?
It's Chris Saliza. He's literally a part. He's a soldier in the war of disinformation.
Yeah.
But the point is correct. The person telling you that point is a dumpster of a human being who would be better off serving and clearly, I mean, not to be rude here, but eating pizzas. Clearly better off eating pizzas than doing news. But it really is a political battle at this point. And that's what's so frustrating for me, because all I'm saying is our rights, our rights, our rights, our rights. These are rights. This is the Constitution. These are our rights. And then you've got a whole bunch of people who are...
pretending it's not about politics.
Well, I don't even say they're pretending. I don't think that's fair. I'm saying they're saying, well, look, we've got these numbers, we've got these problems, we've got this stuff, and those things are all true. We do have, if it's 37,000 or 60,000, it's a massive tragedy either way.
Yeah.
That's 9/11 times 10, right? Like, it's bad. It's a bad thing. But our rights aren't subject to a tragedy.
Is 9/11 times 10,000.
Right.
It's how facts are used, and it's how the media uses them. And Silica is doing the exact same thing he's accusing the other side of doing.
Exactly. And the hard part is our rights aren't subject to tragedy. There's no asterisk on the Bill of Rights. There's no thing that says, well, unless there's a pandemic. Now, I know in the Spanish flu, some places shut down. I get it. That was illegal too. Like, I want to point that out. Also against the Constitution. And just because a judge going heavily into the progressive era might have upheld those things, that doesn't mean that that was correct or that was the intention. And even if a judge now upholds these things, it doesn't mean it's correct. Remember, judges all said it was okay to lock up Japanese in World War II. They were scared of Japanese in World War II. The judges say that it's okay to lock up a U.S. citizen in a military brig, even though it's a U.S. citizen. And it's not okay to lock up a foreign national caught on the field of battle, in a foreign field of battle, in a military brig. They get a civilian court if they want one. But a U.S. citizen, that's military. That's because they were scared when they decided the citizens case. And then 5 years later, when they decided the non-citizens case, they were less scared because that was 2009 versus 2004. You have to understand how much fear impacts those 9 old assholes just as much as everybody else you've ever met. Fear drives so much.
That's another thing, too, that always drives me crazy with all of these arguments. When people say, believe the experts, like putting aside even the question of who the experts are, which apparently means just 1 or 2 people. And,
the expert, right?
Or even, but there's no questioning of, oh, well, they're the high-ranking government bureaucrats at the CDC. What interest institutionally could they possibly have in one outcome or another? They must be perfectly, they must be absolute moral human beings who have no consideration whatsoever for how this impacts what they do or what their relevance is.
Well, the funny thing for me is the people picking the experts aren't qualified to determine the expertise of the expert.
Yeah.
Because there are experts that disagree with all of this. Like, they exist. And I don't know who's right. I'm not qualified, but your governor certainly isn't.
No.
Like, your governor's just a dummy. They're good at talking to people and getting people to vote for them, but that doesn't mean they're good at virology or epidemiology or any of these other things.
By the way, just so you all know about our governor and her chief medical officer, Dr. Joni Caldoun, she was in front of the legislature last year calling it a public health emergency to justify the governor's dictatorial order to ban flavored vaping products.
Vape juice.
Based upon the, fake medical research that said it was the vaping itself, not the vitamin E acetate that was in illicit substances that was causing terrible health problems. And they were marketing these products to children with these fruit flavors because apparently only children think that fruit flavors are better than tobacco flavor.
Have you seen all of the ads on Nickelodeon, Nick Jr., Disney Jr., and Cartoon Network for vape juice? I can't even watch. I can't even watch an episode of Dexter's Laboratory or what are the kids watching these days? I don't even know. Gumball or whatever. I can't even watch an episode of Gumball without 12 vape juice ads. They're not advertising to kids. I hate that stuff. They're advertising to children. Where?
Yeah.
Where? In Playboy?
It was actually really sad. We had a hearing in the oversight committee about this, And after Dr. Khaldun came in and said, this is an emergency because it's an emergency, et cetera, then you had a guy come in and he said, I am a lifelong smoker who only was able, after trying everything else in the universe, to get free of cigarettes by vaping. And because of that, I bought my local vape store. This is way up in the UP where his store was. He said, I can tell you personally, I have helped literally 1,000 people quit smoking cigarettes by introducing them to vaping.
It's been the only thing.
And if you ban this product, we will go back to smoking because it is no better. Just vaping unflavored nicotine is disgusting and gross. People will go back to smoking.
Of course.
You will cause more people to go back to smoking cigarettes if you do this. They went and did it anyway. No legislative approval. That was one other example of the governor's dictatorial actions that foreshadowed what was coming.
2 people in the chat right now. I quit smoking through vaping. Vaping helped me quit smoking. I would love if every smoker on earth vaped rather than smoked, because I don't care if you vape in I don't think the government should ban smoking in restaurants. I really don't. But I would much rather people vape in a restaurant than smoke. Absolutely. Yeah. 1,000,000 times. If we would have all grown up with vaping in restaurants rather than smoking, no one would have ever complained.
Yeah.
Okay, so Michigan governor says some of the worst racism fueled by protests over coronavirus response. You want me to send this to you?
What?
This article? Yeah.
No, I don't care.
Okay.
Yeah, but as I said before, it's nothing more than her way of attempting to get people to stop.
Yeah.
That's all it
is. You were old enough to be considered an at-risk population. I'm still sub 40. I'm still in the good. I'm still in the okay. I'll be okay type thing. Okay, so this is let's talk about this because I want to point this out. Notice there are no pictures of this. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer on Sunday said some gun-toting protesters who demonstrated inside the state capitol in opposition to some of her moves to battle the coronavirus. I love how that's.
By the way, what is toting exactly?
Look, I
imagine gun toting as, rifle in hand, not rifle and sling on your chest. And some of them, they kept their trigger finger near the trigger, let's say. But that's not exactly, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I always imagine toting being,
I only,
your guns
when I'm toting a gun,
brandished, aimed at targets. I picture toting as pew, 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 pew. Not I happen to just have a gun that I'm carrying lawfully.
For me, toting is to actually have a Sterilite or Rubbermaid tote full of guns that I'm carrying in front of me.
There you go.
Preferably overflowing with guns. That's how I do it. I love moves to battle the coronavirus. No one's battling the coronavirus here. That's a weird thing. Like, we're trying to reduce the spread. That's not battle. The virus isn't battling. It's just a virus. Quote, depicted some of the worst racism and, quote, awful parts of U.S. history. Whitmer made the assertion on CNN.
The worst parts of you. There's a funny Babylon Bee story about this where Whitmer had said something, according to the Babylon Bee, which is, of course, a satire publication, saying, these dang protesters are betraying the American values of never protesting, never being mad at tyranny. You can find the original story. It was they put it better than I could. But did you see the music video go down Donald's way down to Caliland? That was
I didn't know that Babylon Bee did music videos.
They made this 2-minute music video. I don't know if I can share my tune with you or not, but I would play it for you. It's absolutely glorious. Okay, here's the story.
If you go to the top right and hit those 3 buttons, the 3 dots up there, you can share screen.
All right, I'm going to do that, but one sec. This is the other one. This is 418,000 shares. On Meet the. This is April 20th, so this is 2 weeks ago. This is Babylon Bee satire. Michigan governor, quote, revolting against a tyrannical government is simply un-American. Whitmer called on the protesters in their state to stop their illegal assembling, reminding them that protesting so-called tyranny is a foreign idea to the history of the United States. Quote, protesting and revolting against your wise rulers goes against everything America was built on, she said. It flies in the face of every American tradition. Revolting against tyranny has no place in this great country. Governor Whitmer then rattled off a long list of things she also believes to be un-American. Declaring independence from tyrants, having a list of protected rights, separation of powers, democratically elected leaders, freedom of religion, assembly, the press, protest, and speech, federalism, apple pie, baseball, America. If you're really American, you'll stop with this dangerous revolutionary activity, she concluded. All right, let me see if I can find this this video, because it is absolutely priceless. Hold on one moment.
Oh, wait, is it a music video?
It is.
It's not gonna, when you share your screen, that's not gonna come through.
You're not gonna hear the sound?
No. And that's probably good, because I'd get a copyright strike anyway. But I could put the link in the description.
From Babylon Bee? I don't know.
It depends. It might not be up to them at all. That's the problem. If they like borrow a riff from someone else or something, it's a mess.
Oh yeah, it's a parody of "Let My People Go."
Oh yeah, I get struck in a heartbeat.
Yeah, all right, I'll send you the link. It's absolutely hilarious. And for some reason, they didn't post it on their main site. It's only on their Twitter feed. But,
yeah. Well, probably because
though.
Their main site could get a copyright claim or something stupid. It's dumb. It shouldn't be, because it'd be a parody, right? So it shouldn't have anything to do with it. But that's not how Content ID works on YouTube. Let me read these chats real quick. Malik Foxon says, that argument drives me insane. The people who think about economic impact don't care about potential lives lost. He's saying that argument drives him insane. I get tired of having to argue over the potential for more lives lost due to starvation and healthcare problems we'll have due to the depression. Right. Exactly. Like there are secondary impacts of all of these shutdowns. And there are really vulnerable populations out there. Interestingly, largely Democrat populations are extremely vulnerable to things like food shortages and low and middle wage workers being non-essential. That's a scary thing for people in those situations. Felipe Mube says, Nick, your YouTube channel has made me watch cable again. If there was 4 more channels like yours, YouTube would go bankrupt. Thanks. Oh no. What's going on over there?
I sent you the wrong link. Sorry, I found something. I thought that was it, but it wasn't. Never mind. All right,
that's okay.
We'll do it all post-stream. There's no reason to go through this all.
No worries. Yeah. No worries. Okay, back to this thing. Whitmer made the assertion on CNN before the release of the latest numbers of deaths in Michigan related to coronavirus. Officials say the 29 new deaths, which increased the number to 4,049, was one of the lowest daily increases since the pandemic began in Michigan. Confirmed cases in Michigan rose by 547, bringing the total to 43,754. During the CNN appearance, Whitmer said the protest featured, quote, Confederate flags and nooses, unquote, as well as swastikas. So that's not in the quote. So I don't know where that came from. But can you tell me about this? Were there Confederate flags and nooses and swastikas at the protest? Because you were there, right?
Yes, I was. I was at all 3. I have never seen a noose anywhere. There was one sign that had a backwards 45 degrees off half swastika that was using it to call Whitmer a Nazi and said Heil Whitmer. So they were calling her a Nazi.
Well, then,
if that's inappropriate, then how about the entire Democrat Party calling Donald Trump the second coming of Hitler for the last 4 years everywhere?
Wow.
There was actually one news story somewhere, I forget where it was, but it was covering the April 15th event that had a photo, it claimed, of the event where they had an actual Nazi flag that they were waving. And then it turned out when people sourced the photo, it was a Bernie Sanders supporter calling Trump a Nazi using an actual Nazi flag. It was a completely completely inauthentic and total hoax. But
it's
I think someone had a sign that said "Impeach Whitler" or something like that, which is just funny because her name is not that far off from Hitler. And yeah, I mean, it's crass. I know she hasn't literally murdered people the way Hitler did, but she has dictatorial impulses, and that's why they make it's typical political hyperbole.
I mean, Hitler literally told people to stay inside. And I mean, he did when they were pulling Jews out of houses and questioning them in the street. They told people to not only stay inside, but to stay away from windows, right? Because if you were caught looking outside, you might be brought outside. It was an interesting policy. Now, obviously different from what Whitmer's doing, but people are making this comparison because this is tyranny. It is tyranny. You can approve of the tyranny, but that's what it is. So members of the Michigan Liberty Militia protested the state's stay-at-home orders this week, some with weapons and tactical gear, and their faces partially covered. Masks! Masks! They're wearing masks! God damn it! They're literally...
Yeah, and this is like 10 people out of 10,000. There's probably about 10,000 people at the April 15th event, maybe only 1,000 at the April 30th event. Either way, any genuine movement of angry citizens against something that's destroying everybody's liberty cannot control what any individual person's message is. And we're not responsible for those messages. And frankly, we're not accountable to the voters. She is. So she can slander and smear the protesters all she wants. At the end of the day, we're all just ordinary people.
You and I were talking about this, I think, prior to the stream, that it doesn't matter what you do. If you wear the mask or don't wear the mask. If you don't wear the mask, they say you're not safe. You're not practicing the proper social distancing. If you wear the mask, you're a militia member with guns and your face covered.
And you're confessing to the illness being so terrible. So how can you be such a hypocrite that you are wearing a mask to protect yourself, but you're protesting that the lockdown, which you must assume is justified if you're wearing a mask to protect your face? Yeah, you can't win.
No, of course not.
The only way you avoid this kind of coverage is to do nothing, and that's what they want. So, and what organization is going to allow themselves to be controlled by people they can't control? Oh, the Michigan militia shows up at our event. Well, I guess we can't have it then. We can't stop who shows up at the Capitol. What are we going to do? Tell them, hey, don't show up. Then they'll make sure they show up.
So, quote, some of the outrageousness of what happened at our Capitol depicted some of the worst racism and also awful parts of our history in this country, she said. Some went to the Senate gallery where a senator said armed men shouted at her. Oh, don't be shouted at. That'd be scary.
Oh, they were shouting. Now, and to be fair, I saw this footage of the folks in the lobby going into the House floor and shouting and saying, this is our house. We want to go to the House floor. Now, on an ordinary day, you can't just go into the House floor. That would not be a reasonable request. But so what? They don't know that. You can't expect an average angry person to not know what the decorum rules of the Capitol are.
Why not? Can a crowd of 15 people go on the House floor?
No.
They should be able to.
Not the floor. The gallery, yes. The lobby, yes. The floor.
Right.
Staff
on the floor.
Can't go on the House floor.
They should be able to. They should be able to.
I work for a lawmaker.
They should be able to walk up and take a dump on the speaker's desk. I don't care. Well, I'm tired of government.
Well, the argument that they would make is that they don't want, expression is okay, interference is not okay, and expression can be happening at the Capitol. There's, people could clearly hear and see all that they were doing. They don't need to go to the House floor to be heard and seen, but it might interfere with what they were doing. But all the same, that doesn't mean that you should demonize and vilify people who don't know what the decorum rules of the House are for being upset. They have a right to be upset. They have a right to say, what is going on that our entire civil society, our entire 3-branch system of constitutional government is suddenly suspended out of nowhere all of a sudden. I mean, that's the kind of extreme action that merits extreme outrage.
Right.
I mean, if anything, they were extremely well disciplined. There was no violence. I think there was one arrest that entire day, and it was a Democrat who started a fight with somebody who was opposed to the protesters.
Now, to be clear,
let all these people into the Capitol. They let all these people into the Capitol. They were screaming, yelling. There was no arrests because they didn't break any laws, and they just kept the peace.
And to be clear, they didn't go to the floor, right? Like they didn't. No. They didn't do that. They're just yelling from the gallery, which...
No, actually, the funny thing is, because then there was this one member of the police that, said, hey, hold on, folks, let me explain it to you. And so he gave him the spiel and says, here's the deal. You're welcome to be as loud as you want right here, but, it's just never the policy to go to the floor. And then protesters start saying, thank you for your service. Because they're conservatives, and that's what they say to police. They were grateful and thankful. And the police
don't be police cucks anymore. Conservatives, stop it. Stop it.
Well, like at the April 15th rally, I was talking to one police officer, and I said, how do you feel about, two whole branches of government being shut down right now? Because I don't care about the government. I care about my brother lost his job. And then there was another time I was walking around with a guy who was he was carrying a rusty pitchfork. And a state trooper said to him, now that's a statement. I mean, the police were on our side. At least half of them were. I mean, it was great.
Okay, so Whitmer said the protest wasn't representative of Michigan and that she's going to listen to facts and science to decide how to handle the pandemic. Quote, whether you agree with me or not, I'm working to protect your life if you live in the state of Michigan. Bigot. I'm adding that. She said, I am going to continue to do my job regardless of what tweets come out or what polls come out or what people think makes sense. Bigot. On Friday, President Trump urged Whitmer to make a deal with the protesters.
Really?
Yeah, it says the governor of Michigan should give a little, put out the fire. These are very good people, but they are angry, Mr. Trump tweeted. They want their lives back again safely. See them, talk to them, make a deal. So that's Trump. Michigan's Republican control.
I'm glad she did not make a deal, for the record. A deal would have been, we'll give us back a tiny sliver of liberty in exchange for you going away and probably the legislature signing off on her orders. We're in a much better place having no deal than having any kind of deal.
But that's just on brand for Trump. He has to say stuff like that.
Yeah.
Michigan's Republican-controlled legislature has questioned Whitmer's authority to extend stay-at-home orders amid the coronavirus pandemic, but the governor used an executive order to extend a state of emergency declaration and has directed most businesses statewide to remain closed. Let me point out, guys, that her authority ended according to the legislature, and she issued an executive order to extend her own authority that the legislature gave her under an old law. Like she didn't, it's not like she could extend this order. That's an illegal act. That'd be like you saying, that'd be like a judge telling you, look, I'm going to stay the execution of your sentence for 30 days, right? Like you're going to go to prison. I'm going to stay the execution of your sentence for 30 days because your son is graduating from high school. And I would really love for you to be able to, you're not a risk to the community or whatever, but I'd really love for you to be able to go to your son's high school graduation before we impose your 3-year prison sentence on you. And this stuff happens, or the birth of your kid or whatever. Pick an event. And a judge will stay the execution of a sentence for a short period of time before you go to prison. And then when 29 days is up of your 30-day stay, you go, no, I'm extending my 30-day stay to 60 days. And the judge says, no, you're not. You would go to, like they would have cops at your house on day 31, arresting you, maybe shooting your dog and kicking your wife or whatever. And then you would go to prison. That's what Whitmer actually did. Her executive authority ended, but she just extended it because.
Well, to go back to the legal issue here, there's these two statutes that she cites, which in the Michigan United for Liberty case that you went through, they made the argument that neither of these are constitutional because they delegate their legislative authority almost in its entirety. The 76 law had that 28-day time limit. The 1945 law did not. Now, what I think the legislature needs to do, and I think they're actually working on this right now, is they need to pass a concurrent resolution. So let me explain for your audience. A bill gets passed by both chambers, goes to the governor for approval. If it's signed, becomes law. Resolutions do not. Resolutions are expressing the sentiment of the House or the Senate, or in a concurrent resolution, both. And they are passed by the majority, simple majority in both chambers, which are both controlled by the Republicans. So if they pass a concurrent resolution that says, we do not believe the governor's actions are reasonable under MCL 10. I think it's 31, whatever the 1945 law is. We do not believe these are reasonable. That is powerful in a court proceeding, because the 1945 law says the governor can take reasonable steps.
Right.
You see? So if they say the opinion of the House and the Senate is that this is not reasonable, then that severely undercuts her ability to argue that she can do whatever the heck she wants. And that's also the other argument that really needs to be made in all these cases at all times, is that this is the most extreme case. This is not a test case of whether or not under certain circumstances the Constitution can be suspended. This is the worst case, where it is completely suspended, where we've given the governor complete and total authority over the complete and total shutdown of travel, commerce, basic human rights in the state. That's what they got to keep hammering on in these cases.
I have to remind people that what Governor Whitmer thinks is that you can go to Walmart to buy food, but if you're there to buy food and you also want to buy a can of paint, that's illegal.
Yeah.
Like, that's her impression of reasonable. These are not reasonable measures. And I mean, I'm an asshole. I argue that shutting down barbershops, massage parlors, all of these small businesses, I think that's inherently unreasonable. I really do. And I think that you could propose or even enforce social distancing guidelines amongst these places. So if you go to a Walmart and they're not enforcing social distancing, that the cops can show up and shut them down, or the cops can show up and say, look, you need to actually enforce these social distancing things. I'm there. I think we could have the set up social distancing guidelines. I draw the line when a government tells you that you can't make money, that you can't try to find a way to keep your business open. That's where I draw my freedom line. I'm sorry. That's just where it is. Because if you're a barber, like, my barber can enforce social distancing really damn easy. There's rarely more than 2 to 3 people in the shop at any given time. And the only social distancing that wouldn't exist, I guess, would be the barber and the client. But if he's wearing a mask and I'm wearing a mask, he already wears gloves to cut hair, because that's kind of if it's not a law, it's a best practice of barbers in Minnesota. So he wears rubber gloves, new ones for each client. And if he puts on a mask and I put on a mask, why can't I get a haircut? Like, why is that not possible? And I can be socially distant from everybody else in that shop. That's not an issue. And if I'm not, someone can make a complaint and the police can come shut them down for not enforcing the order. That's reactive policing. That's what we have, generally speaking. But this idea that, look, you and your restaurant, there's no way that we can conceive of that you could possibly figure it out. I'm sorry, the government is bad at doing business in general. And small business owners are inventive and innovative, and that's why they're small business owners in the first place. They can find a way to operate their business and respect various restrictions put on them. So what is reasonable?
One of the most ridiculous, I know I'm sorry to interrupt, but
no, go ahead.
Of the most, I thought you were wrapping up. One of the most ridiculous things about all this is there's always the assumption that people are too stupid and irresponsible to take care of anything on their own. There's no common sense whatsoever. No one's going to do anything they can to protect their employees. And the reality is, with the public very keenly aware of, the dangers of the illness, that every employer is going to take every step possible to ensure the safety of their employees for the reputation of their company. That's on top of common sense. The only thing, because people ask us, what do you think what's your goal? What is acceptable what's an acceptable level of regulation, right? And I think the answer is only maybe you need to have some kind of liability framework. For example, if an employer says you must come into work and you don't feel safe going into work, and so they fire you, something like that, in those kind of situations. But apart from that, you have to be able to rely on the market of people's common sense. And if a restaurant is allowing people to gather in close proximity, people aren't going to go there because they're afraid. And they're going to, and they're of course going to ostracize the restaurant on social media and everything else. That's just the way it goes. I mean, frankly, even the vicious tendencies of the left actually would probably serve in the free market as a way of checking, any overzealous workplace and having people get into too close contact. You don't need to have the government putting this extraordinary, extreme limit on personal freedom to allow people just to get back to work, because every single company right now is incentivized to appear to be doing everything they can to stop the spread, be responsible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All that by itself is enough to encourage people to do the right thing in almost all cases.
Right. And that's the interesting thing is we are a nation that does allow business owners and commercial activity to guide how these social interactions go. We do it. We rely on them because, as weird as it is, you trust these businesses. You go there. Maybe the only store in your town, but you still go. You don't drive to the next town. You go to these businesses and you participate in them. We actually do largely trust the businesses that we participate in. It's a weird thing. You may not think about it very often, but you do. If you didn't trust them, would you honestly give them money? No. And you would make the effort to go far away. But it's just in this instance that we're not. And we're saying, nope, you're all too stupid. Only these governors know how to save you. And that's crazy talk. The governors are some of the dumbest people you'll ever encounter. They are not qualified in anything that you're... Ask yourself, look in the mirror and say, could Governor Whitmer do your job? The answer is no. I promise you, it doesn't matter if you're a brain surgeon or a janitor or a retail sales associate. Governor Whitmer can't do your job. What is her background? Do you have any idea? Before she was a governor, what did she do?
I don't think she could have done my job as a legislative staffer, to be honest with you. No, she is from a political family. She's been political royalty her whole life.
I heard her dad gave her a nice political boost. Yeah, it's crazy. And so imagine, like, this person can't even do the thing that you do every day, and you're going to trust them to tell you how to literally fucking live for the next X amount of months. It's not just they're going to tell you one thing that they have some specialty over. It's your entire life. That's what we're trusting to these governors. I have never met a governor who could do half of what I do. I don't know any governor with 5 kids. And I certainly don't know any governor with my 5 kids. How on earth would I trust them to tell me how to live? I got a lot of super chats to read. I'm backlogged here. Nova Zero says, I've heard the workers propose eating people. Most of them are vegans. I mean, that's like grass fed, right? Yep, exactly. Perfect. Good meat on them. Wes Nilechan says the communicability of the virus and the risk of it overwhelming the healthcare system. If the healthcare system could escalate and de-escalate quickly, even toilet paper makers wouldn't scale capacity, just max existing productive capacity. I get that. And that matters in urban areas where the flare-ups do work. But in outside of those areas, You literally have nurses being laid off and doctors being laid off because the healthcare system is not only not in danger of being overwhelmed, but because the coronavirus has kept people away and they can't stay in business, so they're furloughing employees.
It never even happened here either. They built some kind of ad hoc hospital in Metro Detroit. I forget what the exact location was, but it was just never used.
And that's the crazy. Detroit is like the third worst population center hit, right?
So they say. Yeah,
it's one of the worst. I mean, New York City being the absolute worst.
Well, and by the way, New York City being, because they're all packed in like sardines. Detroit were not. I think the major reason why Detroit got hit hard is because we have an enormous airport hub.
Right.
Detroit Metro is Delta's entire continental hub, tons of international flights. That's probably why it was. But, it's happened. And now travel has, thanks to Trump, largely been restricted from foreign countries. So they won't be coming in that way the next time.
Right.
So there's no reason to think there's going to be this second spike the way there was the first one. If anything, the complete opposite.
Mr. Deadman says, "How do we stop these governors from abusing their power? Do you expect a massive wave of lawsuits? How likely do we engage in war with China? Unlikely war with China. Governors abusing their power? You can't. You can't stop them. That's what we're learning from this virus. You can't stop them."
I've got an answer for that.
Yeah.
You got to start speaking out. You've got to start changing public opinion. The reason why politicians do what they do is because they think they can get away with it. Governor Whitmer is auditioning for the Veep role, and whether or not she gets that, also campaigning for re-election in 2022. Right now, according to the polls, this is working out for her. That has to change. And I can't emphasize enough, as someone who works in politics professionally, it doesn't just all happen on the internet. It's geographical.
Yeah.
You gotta start getting involved in local politics. That's the way it always works.
You guys in Michigan got to do it. I talk to a state house rep in Minnesota fairly frequently and tell him he's not doing a good job. I feel bad. It's my friend. I'm like, you got to fight the governor, man. What are we doing? What are we doing? But no, there's no legal step to stop a governor from abusing their power because they just shut down the courts. And you can try, but at the end of the day, the ultimate outcome is going to be a court order. And if the governor doesn't follow with it, what do you do then?
Politicians live in constant fear of being disliked, even the ones who aren't even seeking re-election. But especially if there's seats in play, and Michigan's a swing state.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of ways to inflict pain on politicians. The number one source is angry voters in general, but bad press, letters, denouncements. There's all kinds of ways to make a big stink. And it's a lot easier to cause pain for a politician than to give them pleasure. So,
yeah, please do not try to pleasure Governor Whitmer. For your own sake, please don't do that. You will lose everything in your soul. Morty J says, "Hey, yeah. Nick, just got home safely from driving in a thunderstorm that turned into hail pelting my truck. No major damage to the truck, but I want to say thanks for your content providing entertainment in my scared state." Hey, my pleasure, buddy. I'm glad you made it home safe, and I'm glad your truck isn't damaged. Andrew Bin says, "My boss sent out a group message to have her family over for dinner. Facebook responded in their group chat about obeying social distancing. Mommy Facebook wags its finger." So like the Facebook group of family members like, "Hey, come over for dinner." It's like Facebook, observe your social distancing. I never use Facebook anymore. I haven't posted on there in months.
People need to figure out who they're really accountable to. Who cares what people on Facebook say about you? Unless they have some power over you. But if they don't, then who cares? Also
remember that Facebook is literally reading your private group conversations. They're reading them and sending you notices. Don't use Facebook.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Why hasn't anybody invented an open source social network
Signal
that doesn't have any central servers, where it uses some kind of BitTorrent system where the users themselves actually power it?
Signal. End-to-end encrypted signal.
Well, the signal's just for texting. Does Signal do more than that?
I don't think so. It's literally peer-to-peer. That's the way Signal can operate.
We've got free open source web browser. We've got free open source Office. Why don't we have free open source social network yet? Where is that thing?
The problem with all of that is a social network necessarily has to route and have data housed on a central server that can be saved and then must be saved to comply with government regulations. Whereas Signal,
usually BitTorrent and blockchain or something, they can make this happen.
Signal is all end to end, and some people are saying Mastodon. I've never heard of Mastodon. Have you heard of Mastodon?
I have not. I'm going to look into it.
Maybe they should blockchain their damn advertising. I've never heard of it. Don't you dare say mine.
Mastodon is an American heavy metal band from Atlanta, Georgia. No, that's not right.
but yeah, I have no idea. But yeah, the Signal, like if you're messaging people, guys, do stuff like Signal. End-to-end encrypted. It's not held by an intermediary, and the government can't subpoena Signal for your stream keys or what, or not your stream keys, your encryption keys or anything like that, like it did to LavaBit. And those messages disappear after an hour. So there's no evidence. Use Signal. Trust me.
Signal is great, but that's not the same. That's not what I'm talking about.
No, I got you.
We need a complete social media solution that replaces all these bastards.
Yeah. Gab is a Mastodon fork, but it sucks. I have no idea. We'll have to check it out. Mithrin Emra says, as temporary as the measures taken in the Patriot Act, once again we see people willing to trade liberty for an illusion of safety, and in those willing to narc out people, and gasoline is steadily being poured onto the fire. Yeah, if you're narking people out, you should probably noose yourself in Minecraft for all I care. I'm so that is beyond me. And
I hope people start foiling the police reports of these snitches.
Yeah. Andrew Bin says, for Adam, the best example of Michigan are St. Joe and Benton Harbor. St. Joe's quaint and safe. Cross the bridge and you were in Mogadishu, or I mean Benton Harbor. That sounds like a Michigan reference.
I haven't been out there. No, that's that area. So St. Joseph, this is the very lower left corner of Michigan, right in the border of Indiana. And I think St. Joseph is like Whirlpool's headquarters. And there's been all kinds of racial issues between Benton Harbor and St. Joseph for a long time.
Mithrin Emrys says, also, if the 6-foot distancing remains in place, schools can't reopen without doubling the number of teachers, adding modular classrooms, and staggering activities like lunch, PE, etc. The secondary and tertiary impacts, man. Yeah, schools are on life support right now because everybody is realizing that their kid doesn't need to go to a school. Their kid needs to go to a place with an internet connection, and that's it. Like, or stay at home. Like, if you need a babysitter to watch your kid use the internet to connect to school, fine. You don't need to go to a school anymore.
Yeah, let me once again flash this portrait of John Taylor Gatto above me here. Schools and healthcare are the two biggest wastes of money in our country. Yeah. And this is not going to work out well for public education.
Public education is a joke. Private education is the same. I mean, like
a lot of it is. It's better, but it's still subject to most of the same rules and regs. I remember in 2013 when they had the government shutdown, I was working on the Hill, and we were thinking, if this goes on for more than like a week or two, people are going to start realizing they don't need the federal government. And sure enough, they very quickly solved that problem. Unfortunately, it happened again when Trump shut it down, and then he chickened out on keeping it shut.
My oldest son, does 2 classes at a private school because their classes, you can't really homeschool band, right? So he does band and drama at a local private school, and they sent out an email the other day, and the email says, "Good news! May 21st is the official end of the school year now, which is earlier than it was going to be, because students are checking out and parents are checking out, as we've noticed by a across-the-board decrease in work being turned in. And it's not just at the private school. This is a national problem. All across the nation, parents and students have realized what a joke school is, and the parents have just stopped fucking caring enough to stop making their kids turn in homework. They're like, why the hell are they doing this shit? This is a waste of time. Schools are on life support right now. They don't know what to do. The funny thing is, all of these states that have shut down not only this school year, but the beginning of next school year, they're like, well, maybe we'll pick it up in semester 2 of 2021. Like, these schools are like, what the fuck are we supposed to do? What are we going to do? We don't know what to do. The kids don't care. The parents don't care.
Did you see the survey? Did you see the survey that said that kids were overwhelmingly happy that they didn't have to go to school anymore?
Can you imagine?
Of course they did.
I'm pissed that there was no horrific virus when I was a kid. Like, oh my God, imagine having a year off. A whole year. What are you going to do for a year?
Man.
Whatever the hell I want. Ride my bike over to my friend's house and call people the gamer word on Halo 2. That's it. That's all I want to do. Oh my God. How great would it be? We're going to watch bad movies. We're going to trick our parents into renting R-rated movies with boobs in them. Everything we can
make movies.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. That's all. I can't imagine having a whole year. And all you have to do is occasionally click on a link on your computer and turn in some half-assed paper. Oh my God. Schools.
Yeah, I know things are I know things are different for other people, especially in licensed professions, but for me, my education was mostly entirely suspended for the entire period I was in college and resumed immediately afterwards in the real world. The huge majority of classes I took, even in college, I don't remember one thing about.
I didn't do any work.
It was in the real world where suddenly when things actually matter, you start remembering things. It's amazing how that works.
I barely did.
I couldn't tell you.
In high school and undergrad, I barely did anything ever. I remember one of my teachers in high school. I'm walking around, middle of class. I'm just walking around the hallways I had a Discman in my pocket because this was still in the 90s, y'all, and iPods didn't exist yet. I had a Discman playing CDs with headphones on, and in my other pocket, I had like a 20-ounce Coke or a Cherry Coke that I bought because that was before schools banned fun and sugar from them. So, and my teacher comes across me in the hallway, and he's like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, walking around, listening to music. What are you doing? He's like, do you even go to class? Like, not really. He's like,
yeah.
He says, I've only ever seen you in a hallway with pop and your headphones on. It's like, yeah. Your school's stupid.
Most of my course selections in college were based around course requirements. I wanted to take like chemistry and physics just as fun classes, but they were all 4 credits and I needed 5. So I'm not going to take 2 and be all screwed up. So I took geology and astronomy because they were 5 credits. I remember literally zip from any of those. Almost all the courses they had to take graduation.
Astrology?
No, astronomy.
Oh, I thought you said astrology. Yeah. I was like, Jesus Christ. Burn the system. No. Burn it immediately.
U of M was not that bad. It's almost that bad. I guess, I think I took some African American studies class for my humanities credit requirement. I remember
University of Michigan. You're saying?
Yeah.
That U of M? Yeah, it is that bad. University of Michigan is the one that both lost and won the racial bonus points lawsuits.
Oh, I can tell you all about those. I was there when those all happened.
Those are amazing.
Well, here's the funny part. Since you said they both won and lost, let's explain how this all went down. Okay?
Yeah.
So what happened was there was these 2 cases, Grutter and Gratz versus Bollinger, who's the president of the university, okay? Grutter was a law student at the law school, graduate student.
He won.
Gratz, undergrad.
He lost. Yep.
She, but actually, I think they were both she's.
They're all he's to me.
But do you know why the one prevailed and the other one did not?
The reason that the law school student won was, if I remember the opinions correctly, is basically the law school was more selective and therefore could have a higher or more stringent requirement, whereas the undergrad was more general and more open to the public since it didn't require a pre-existing degree. But
you are wrong, sir.
I'm happy to be wrong. That's what I remember from the opinion.
Here's the distinction. What they said was the law school didn't assign a specific point score for individual criteria for one thing or another. It just considered everything in whatever blah context there was. Whereas the undergrad system was very rigid. It said you get X points for this SAT score. You get X points for this GPA. You get X points for being a minority. You get X points for being a legacy hire, but that does not apply if you're a minority. You get X points for being a man in nursing, but that does not apply if you're a minority because you already get the minority credit, et cetera, et cetera. It was a rigid point system.
The best point of that was literally in the undergrad system. Let's say as a high school prodigy student, you cured cancer. That was less points than being black.
Yeah.
That's the crazy part of that was if you cured cancer or you personally launched the Hubble with a math equation, that was less points than just being black under the system. And so
But here's the funny aftermath of that whole case. Years later, this is like I think maybe 4 or 5 years after the decision, I actually got to talk to one of the lawyers that argued this case. And I asked him, now that the Supreme Court said that the point system in the undergraduate admissions program was no longer constitutional, how do things work now? He says, nobody knows. Here's what happens. The people on the 5th floor of the administration building, which is the admissions office, they all review the applications and they write the scores on them and they send them up to the 6th floor. Nobody knows what happens on the 6th floor. Nobody.
Nothing but orgies and racism on the 6th floor.
They decide who gets admitted and who does not, and nobody gets to know. It is absolutely 100% opaque. It is all because what the court effectively said was, as long as there's no specific set criteria that determines who gets in and who doesn't, you can do whatever you want. So that's what they do. They say, okay, well, we will admit whoever we want, and we don't have to prove anything to anybody. And that's what they do.
And the only reason these even went to court is because it was state schools rather than private. Yeah. I mean, that's the other part of that. So should we briefly talk about this lawsuit?
Sure.
Filed by Mitchell. The Mitchell one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Although, I mean, there's not much to it more than the last one. The main distinction is, as I see it, is that it's filed in federal court, frankly. Other than that, it's more or less the same idea.
Yeah, so I've got it up on the screen here, and skipping past all the boring stuff and going straight into the executive action. Executive Orders, paragraph 17. Emergency Powers Act permits a governor during times of great public crisis, disaster, rioting, catastrophe, or similar public emergency within the state. Now think about this, guys. I want you to think about what a great public crisis, disaster, rioting, and catastrophe all have in common. Okay, so think about rioting. Do riots last multiple months? No, not normally. They're usually a couple days, maybe a week. 2 weeks would be a long. I mean, if you've got rioting for 2 weeks, you've got an insurrection. That's a different thing. Catastrophe. The catastrophe occurs, and now you're in recovery. These things are very temporary measures. Pandemics that last months they're pushing the bounds of this stuff. Or similar public emergency within the state, or reasonable apprehension of immediate danger of a public emergency of that kind when public safety is imperiled. To proclaim a state of emergency and designate the area involved, which in this case is Michigan, all of it. And to promulgate...
the whole state. UP, Upper Peninsula, Lower Peninsula, all that whole thing. It's all the same.
They're the same, right? The Upper Peninsula of Michigan is the exact same as Detroit, right?
You know, the funny thing is, I can drive in Michigan to Copper Harbor, and that is a longer drive than to Washington, D.C. Michigan is a lot more vast than it looks on the map.
Yeah.
It is 600 miles from my house to Copper Harbor.
It
is a huge place.
It's a huge place.
And there's still places I have never been. I've never been to Benton Harbor. I've never been to...
I heard that's Mogadishu.
Never been to... Yeah, I've heard that too. Haven't seen it.
I have no idea.
Never been to Sault Ste. Marie, where Lucas Gerhard went.
Right.
But I've lived here for 20 years. It's a big place, and working in politics, I can say I've been almost everywhere, man. But there's tons of places in Michigan, and it is a vast state.
Most states in the U.S. are as big as a European nation. Like, it's crazy how big our country is when you start looking at other countries. And so you do have these very diverse areas, and that's the point. Governor Whitmer likely could, Governor Hitler likely could designate Detroit as an emergency area. They've got a massive airport. They've got people in close proximity. They've got a higher per capita population than other places. The Upper Peninsula doesn't need the same things. It just doesn't. It doesn't need the same restrictions. Anyway, to promulgate reasonable orders, rules, and regulations as he or she considers necessary to protect life or property, or to bring the emergency situation within the affected areas under control. Emergency Management Act. This is a separate act. Emergency powers, emergency management. Permits a governor to, upon declaration of an emergency or disaster, compel evacuation. Obviously, there's no evacuation here. To control entry, to, exit from, and the occupancy of premises within the affected area. I want you to look and think about how this is drafted and what kind of emergencies they're talking about. Talking about things like, not in Michigan, but akin to a hurricane, massive tornado problems, big fire issues, some sort of geological event, massive snowstorm that is dangerous, some sort of like that bad movie, Day After Tomorrow, winter hurricane sort of thing.
There was some concern about communist invasion too back in those days, I think.
Yeah, I've heard of a movie called Red Dawn. You've got to think of what they're talking. Compelling evacuation or to control entry and exit from affected areas. They're not talking about the entire state. They're not talking about locking people into their homes due to a pandemic, because I know this is shocking, but you don't have a right to not be infected by someone else with an infectious disease. You just don't. Nowhere is that in the Constitution or in anywhere else. Among other things, Michigan comprehensive laws, executive orders issued under this act have the force of law. What is it?
Compiled laws.
Compiled laws. Oh, damn it. Stupid Michigan. March 20, governor issued executive order 2017 under both acts. Order requires hospitals, freestanding surgical outpatient facilities, and dental facilities to postpone non-essential medical procedures until after the governor declares the state of emergency to be over. Willful violation is a misdemeanor. Executive Order 2020 under both acts closed wide range of public accommodations, including restaurants, food courts, cafes, coffee houses, and other places of accommodation offering food or beverage for on-site consumption. Another misdemeanor. 21. All in-person work that the governor deems not essential to sustain or protect life, a willful violation, is a misdemeanor, which the governor deems to protect life, not right. What you think, right? Not like if you're a butcher and you're giving people meat, sorry, non-essential, potentially. I don't know if that's true. I don't know what she picked. 2020-42.
It changes by the day.
Right. 2020-42, while imposing even greater restrictions on the general public than before, another misdemeanor. 2020-43, the order extends through April 30th. The willful violation is a misdemeanor. On April 24th, 2020-59, extending it through May 15th. It purports to loosen some restrictions imposed as part of a phased reopening of the economy. April 30th, the governor issued 2020-67, extends the original declaration of a state of emergency through May 28th. On the same day, the governor issued 2020-66 and 68, declared an end to the state of emergency and the state of disaster declared under the Emergency Management Act because the legislature declined to grant an extension of those declarations, as is its right under the act. 2020-68 purports to declare a new state of emergency and a new state of disaster. So think about this. You have an existing state of emergency and state of disaster, right? And the legislature says, we vote to shut it down. So she goes, okay, that one's shut down. Now we got a new one. That's what she did.
Yeah, by the way, can we also point out that she didn't have to declare it a state of disaster as well as emergency, but she chose to also call it a disaster. The state is in a state of disaster. We're in a disaster right now. Not a tornado or hurricane or anything, but it's just a disaster.
I think
it's a disaster.
Michigan is always in a state of disaster, to be fair.
To some degree, yes.
I'm just kidding, mostly.
You're fair. No, well, yeah, your state too, but ours as well.
Oh, Minnesota's terrible. Don't get me wrong. I'm not defending this state. I hope Minnesota as a state, not the people in it, but the state entity, catches coronavirus and dies. The same day, the governor. Did you say cheers?
Yeah.
Let me pour another Michter's rye. By the way, guys, I'm drinking Michter's small batch rye. It's delicious. Strong recommend. This is a very inexpensive bourbon. It's $39.99 at my local store, which is probably overpriced. But this is great.
I'm drinking Four Roses small batch, probably about the same price point. Also very nice, although not as nice as their single barrel. Really has a kind of a Coca-Cola taste to it, though. It's very caramelly, but it's a smooth, nice bourbon.
This doesn't taste like Coca-Cola. This tastes like a dreamy rye whiskey. It's very smooth, and I strongly recommend. Okay.
It smells like it doesn't taste like it.
Well, that's good because that would be depressing.
And I'm a simpleton with respect to these whiskeys too. I mean,
me too.
I know what I like, but I'm not like, oh, it has a note of coriander there and blah blah blah. I'm just generally like, yeah, syrupy. No, I mean not syrupy. It's a nice bourbon. It is good. I've had much worse for this price.
Let's see. So we've got under the authority of new declared emergencies under 67 and 68. So it's the same thing. Governor issues executive order on May 1st. Governor orders 2020-70 under both acts. It extends 59 while purporting to loosen some additional restrictions. It's part of the phase reopening. What did she loosen?
I don't know. Oh, I've heard that she backed off on the ban on gardening at big box stores.
The ban on gardening?
Yes. So reportedly, because the conservative media apparently were a bunch of idiot bigots claiming that she banned the sale of seeds and gardening supplies. But apparently that only applied to the big box stores. They still allowed the small garden. Now, this is all a bunch of garbage. In actual fact, huge crops were decimated because they couldn't be sold.
Right.
But apparently she has now allowed us to buy flooring and seeds and gardening supplies from the major hardware stores.
Oh, thank you, glorious leader, for doing that.
Oh, wasn't she wonderful? But the other day, I think this was before that change went into effect. I had to buy some fencing because I got 2 German Shepherds and a big yard, and I'm fencing it off. I wanted to expand the fencing area.
I too want to get better at fencing for different reasons.
That Home Depot sold their fencing supplies inside the store by the lumber, whereas Lowe's sold the fencing outside in the garden section. So I go to Lowe's, can't buy my fencing. So I go to Home Depot, but I can buy my fencing there because it's inside by the lumber. Because that's just how that all works.
If you buy your fencing from Home Depot, then you give your money to abortions.
Really?
Yeah, Home Depot's an abortion promoting place.
I heard Home Depot was owned by a libertarian type or something, and Lowe's was the more liberal company. No, Home Depot supports abortion.
I don't know anything about Lowe's, but I'm pretty sure Home Depot gives money to Planned Parenthood or something like that.
I'll have to look into that. I really try to, and I know it's not the conservative thing to boycott everybody the way it is for the left, but I really do have a shit list of companies, especially all these fuckers grandstanding about, how much they care about us in the time of crisis and blah, 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 that I don't want to shop with anymore. And I really do make a point to try to go to local restaurants that only offer takeout and make a point to support them. But
that's too much work for me. I literally just go wherever I'm close to.
Yeah, it is work. But it's also stupid. All of it is completely ridiculous. I mean, the whole idea. I actually heard from people who were defending Whitmer, saying, "Well, the reason why that the big box stores said that they have to ban sales of flooring and gardening is because they're so big, and that way they'll have less customers." They already have limited their customers. They already have that. They already say you can't go in if there's more than X number of customers in the store per Whitmer's orders.
And they're huge. They're
huge.
Matter? They're huge stores. My Walmart, and it's not even the biggest Walmart I've ever been in, not even close, is like, we're limiting to 230 people or whatever. And there's a person there with a thing tracking how many people come in. I have never been turned away from my Walmart. The amount of people at these stores that you have to reach capacity is huge. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's so arbitrary and ridiculous. Today, I went to a store. My puppy tore through my fitted sheet on my bed. Really? So I want to go to Bed Bath & Beyond, buy a new sheet. Closed, gone, shut down, can't open. So I guess I have to go to Walmart, or we have in Michigan, we've got Meijer. I don't know if you got those in Minnesota. It's the same idea, slightly better quality, but same idea as Walmart.
We have Target.
Same idea as Target. Yeah. So Bed Bath & Beyond, closed. Can't sell the exact same things they sell at Meijer.
Nope.
It's just asinine. It is just ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, but okay, so this thing, they're looking for the judgment. I mean, they're saying that these are unreasonable. We're not going to go through this whole lawsuit. But there are several lawsuits happening there in Michigan challenging this stuff. The problem is, of course, that all this stuff takes time. It all takes time to get through. Whoops, I had the wrong. This is the one I want to go away. It all takes time to go through. It's going to take potentially years for some of these cases to see real resolution. By then, hopefully, we'll be long out of Corona Chan. But I think I want to read some of the super chats and then probably wrap up the stream. Is there anything you want to say to people to let them know about Michigan or about this stuff, or what the Michigan parties are doing? I mean, I think Republicans are largely opposed to Whitmer.
Well, I'm not so sure about that.
Oh, damn. Really?
Well, up until I think 24 hours before that event on April 30th, they were trying to make some kind of deal. And it actually wasn't because of the protesters. It was because Whitmer was so obstinate and saying, I will not give an inch, because she's got to come across as a strong, powerful woman, that she just refused to negotiate in any way, shape, or form with the legislature, that they said, screw it, I guess we got no better choice than to up against her. Sure. But let me make this point, and this is really important. It's not just that the legislature isn't doing anything right now, and the courts are, for the most part, not doing anything right now. And we talked earlier, Nick, about actually the previous event. The previous show, we talked about this Lucas Gerhard case, which is, I think, going to get a hearing 2 weeks from now. But basically, courts are offline.
If he's lucky, they'll open it up for a hearing in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not just the lack of activity at the legislative level either. There was a lack of constituent mail coming in demanding that people reopen. There was amazingly, there was a lack of communication even from lobbyists who are harmed by this, asking for their interest to be reopened because they're afraid of upsetting any small constituency that wants to be open. If people want this situation to change, they have to speak out. And that means directly talking to their lawmakers and encouraging everybody else in their circle to do the same. And sadly, there is an attitude that stuff doesn't matter. That stuff is all that matters. It really is. Every decision lawmakers make is based upon what they think is going to be the political outcome, which is based on public opinion. And this attitude that, they're just ruled by special interests and it's not worth my time to write them a letter. No, it might not be worth the time to write them a long letter, but when someone says, hey, just sign a petition saying open our government, sign it and promote it, because they need to hear from the people. That is what is shaping their opinions. And everything that we do on the internet is great, but it has one core flaw, which is that it is not geographical, and everything in politics is geographical. I'm here in Michigan. Most of you are not. Some of you are not in the United States. But everything that happens in wherever you are happens because of who is around you and what they do. So you have to organize locally. That's the way it's always worked, and that is what has always been effective. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. They don't want to accept it. They think that, politicians are all up on this altar and it doesn't work that way. And it just comes out to some kind of general consensus of what is popular that changes things. No, it is intensely local. That is where the decisions are made by the individuals whose collective judgment is what ends up becoming law. So if you want to get involved, you have to. And it sucks. I hate it. And you will too. You will hate getting involved with the Republican Party. You will hate it. But it is the only way that anything ever gets done.
So what you're saying is, if I make a video that says Governor Whitmer is a giant pile of garbage, everybody should email the link of that video to their Michigan politician.
Yeah, and to everybody that they know in Michigan. And to everybody they know in Michigan personally. Yes, absolutely.
There it is, guys. Like, it's I agree, and I'm making a joke out of it, but I agree. Knowing a politician, it's really what their local constituents think that is their concern, for better or worse. And sometimes it is for better. Like, look, my job is to represent my constituents. And then sometimes it's for worse in that, look, my job is to represent my constituents. I don't care about weed because they're all old and they don't care about weed. I don't care about this issue because they're all this thing and they don't care about that thing. Like, that's real stuff that goes on. And so you don't have to go meet your local politician, because God knows if you meet politician, bathe in bleach for 10 hours and do an exorcism.
Yeah.
Because they're not even people. But it's not about meeting them. Literally, they care about those emails that come in. They really care about handwritten letters. If you're
no.
Wait, really?
No, that is one of their worst lies. That is a lie they tell you to get you to stop doing what you're doing.
They lied to me. Email those fuckers. Don't write them anything.
No, okay. Let me give you the background on all this. This is one of the most. This is one of the most pernicious lies.
While you do it. Sorry. Go ahead.
Then you're going to miss out. Okay. So let me take you all through the scenario. You're a politician. You're a local representative. And I say local, you're a state representative. You represent 90,000 people in Michigan. You get one letter that's 2 pages long from one constituent about whatever. What does that mean to you? It is the opinion of one constituent. Now let's say you get a little pile of index cards from 100 constituents. It says one thing. Please don't vote to raise my taxes on House Bill XYZ. Because if you do, I'll know you're a traitor and I hate your guts. What do you think about that? That's the opinion of 100 constituents, not just one. Furthermore, they might think, hey, this is a letter and they're all the same. This came from some group. This came from some group that has a list. A list they might use again in election season. If I vote wrong on this, they might email the same exact group and say, Senator Blow voted for this tax increase. It's about numbers. Every individual person's vote counts the same. The notion that we want a handwritten letter is a way to get you to do things that people won't do. Because people won't write handwritten letters. Because people aren't good writers. And people aren't comfortable with their writing ability. So when you say, oh, don't send them this form letter, write your own handwritten letter, what's going to happen is people don't write the letter because writing your own handwritten letter is hard.
I've never written a handwritten letter in my life.
I've written lots of form letters for lots of other people.
Handwritten form letters, though?
Well, I write them, and they're not handwritten anymore.
Right.
No, I type them in. Here's the point I was making while you were gone, to politicians, it's about the number of people who are upset. When they get an issue of controversy, they ask 4 questions. Question 1, what are they mad about? Question 2, mad enough to vote against me? Question 3, how many of these people are there? Question 4, what'll it take to make them go away? What do you think is the most important of those 4 questions?
What does it take to make them go away? Really?
How many of them are there?
That was a trick question.
Because if that's a small number, the rest don't matter at all. That's what matters. How many of them are there? So think about this in context of the handwritten letter premise. How many people are going to write handwritten letters to their lawmakers? Hardly any.
I will.
But when they get a stack of postcards from an organized group saying vote no on the tax hike or whatever it is, oh, that's a lot of people, my constituents. Plus, it's an organized group that might have a list they might use again in election season. They care much more about those form letters than they do about the handwritten letters. Handwritten letter, mostly they look at it and say, oh, wacko, don't care, and the end. When they get a pile of them from a group of people, they're like, oh, shoot, these people might actually do something. They might cause some real trouble. That's what they care about.
What if I handwrite a letter in the blood of their children? Does that work? I'm just kidding. Don't.
Of course. Of course that works.
Yeah,
do that.
I have, and it did. Let me see. Super Iron Bob says words starting with F meaning to have intercourse with science. Nova Zero says Mastodon was for woke people, but then because it was open source, Dissenter and the cuck who made it put it into Gab, except they suck. How do you pay people to work for the larger community's benefit? That's why. I have no idea. I don't know the answer.
Me neither.
And Marty Lund says went upstate to the woods for the weekend, and the local city's economy up there is a mess. Bars are closed, small restaurants crushed, chain restaurants picking up all the takeout business with almost all the servers gone. 4 COVID cases ever. Empty hospital. Welcome to my town.
I am so disgusted by the fact that these fast food joints are making money hand over fist because they're already equipped for drive-through service. It's just so sad.
Yeah.
I really try to go to the places that are open for takeout just to support them.
Yeah, it's I mean that's exactly, he just described my town. Exactly. And so if you're ever confused about my positions on this stuff, like, you have to examine where you are versus where I am. If you're confused and you're in a metro area, we're in literally different worlds. We don't exist in the same reality, and that's okay. I'm not invalidating yours or saying that yours needs to change. I'm saying that the restrictions that work in Dallas, Texas are far different than what needs to happen in Spicer, Minnesota. They're just different places. And
also, let me tell y'all, move to the country as soon as you can. It's great. You'll never come back.
Yeah, I agree. And this is coming as someone who I love the city. I really do. Lived in cities my entire life. Moved to the country. I will never, ever move back to the city, no matter how much I miss the food. Because that's the only thing I miss is the food.
I'm lucky. I live about 10 miles south of Ann Arbor, Ann Arbor is a big college town, which has all the things you'd love in a college town. But I'm 10 miles south, and somehow all the sprawl of Ann Arbor has not hit Milan. It's gone west and east and north, but not south. And so I've got all the access to the city I want, but at the same time, my local grocery store has never run out of toilet paper. It's great.
That's fortunate.
I can shoot guns in my backyard, and I can be downtown in 25 minutes. It's wonderful.
I can shoot guns in my backyard. I can't be downtown anywhere in 25 minutes. That's worth being. But our stores did run out of toilet paper. That was a little bit of jarring. But
so Milan's even better. Come to Milan. You're all good people on this channel, so I'll ask you to. The rest of the world can buzz off.
I will never go to Michigan until Governor Whitmer has lost an election. I'll put that.
You're in Minnesota.
Look, I want Governor Walz.
You have Elon Omar. You've got Keith. What's his name? Ellison.
Look, I want Ilhan Omar to pull the lever on the guillotine for Governor Walz while Keith Ellison holds him down, and then I want those two to spontaneously combust. They are terrible. All of them suck. I want them all gone.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to travel.
I'm just Josh, and we got Rashida Tlaib out here, so I know how you feel. I'm just saying,
if I'm going to leave this state, I'm certainly not going to go where Whitmer is. Like, if I'm going to leave this state, I'm just going to go to Texas or Florida, or that's it.
Fair enough.
I'm not going anywhere else.
Wyoming?
Yeah, Wyoming, Montana. I could deal with those places.
South Dakota.
Okay, let me read the super chats, and then I think we should wrap up the show, because I am several Mictors in, and it's great.
I'm tired too.
Yeah, exactly. Phoenix Lord Asterman says, I see you're making Star Wars prequels quotes on Twitter, despite allegedly not being a fan, Nick. How embarrassing. Look, I hate them. I hate them. Except for episode 2. It's the only Star Wars movie that I like at all. And I know that'll piss a lot of people off, but it's okay.
I have not seen a Star Wars since episode 1. That was it for me. I was done.
Phantom Menace with the pod racing?
Yeah, that was just done.
It's trash. It's absolutely garbage.
I loved the first trilogy. After episode 1, did never need to see a Star Wars ever again for the rest of my life.
I learned the other day that my how embarrassing phrase came from Star Wars episode 2, and I didn't know it. Yoda says it. And I hated every minute of that. Damn it.
It's a great phrase, though.
It is. But to just know that it was said by a little green popsicle, and he's like, how embarrassing. How embarrassing. He says it twice, too. It's terrible. I had no idea. And I'm like, no.
Sorry, bud.
Genghis Khan says, Democrats, quote, no, you were supposed to die from virus. Orange man bad. Witset says, haha, chloroquine go burr.
Oh, yeah, we didn't get to her, but there's nothing much to talk about anyway. I mean, basically, she...
Real quick, let me explain the story to the chat, and then you can help explain what this means. That would be great.
Yeah.
Witset is a Democrat congresswoman from the state Congress, the state house in
state rep.
Michigan.
Yeah, we don't call us Congress at the state level. Yeah,
state rep in Michigan, and that's okay. She's also black, right?
Yes.
And she catches the coronavirus because the coronavirus is also racist. She catches the coronavirus, but she lives through it. And because she took the chloroquine, that's the thing that Trump recommended as a possible cure for coronavirus. She takes that and then she recovers. So she lives through Corona-chan. Despite it hating black people, she makes it through. And then she goes to the White House to meet with Trump and Pence. And she says, "Thank you, President Trump, for all you're doing." So what is the logical response from the Democrat Party in Michigan is to unanimously vote to censure her, right? Because she has the wrong opinion. Now, can you tell us what censure means for a legislator?
As I understand it, the group that voted to censure her was the 13th District Democrat Committee.
Yes.
The 13th Congressional District is represented by Rekieta Tlaib. So this is not a state representative body. I mean, there isn't one. The way the parties work is you've got the national party, the state party, you got county parties, and you have congressional district parties, okay? So she is a state representative in the Detroit area. Her district, her state representative district includes the 13th Congressional District. So the 13th Congressional District Committee voted to censure her.
Right.
That means nothing except just a slap in the face and saying, "We're coming to get you."
It says you're not going to get any organizational money next election. Is that fair?
That, and also they are going to support a primary challenger against her to remove her from office.
Wow. So, and they literally said, like, they cited as their reasoning, she talked to Trump.
Yes.
Like that's her sin.
She talked to Trump and said, "Thank you for helping save my life."
Yeah. That's all he did. He recommended this one drug. Now, Wolvenar says she only got the med because she reached out to Trump to get it. The drug was supposedly banned from the state. I don't know anything about that.
That's true. I don't think that's true. I think what happened was Whitmer was poo-pooing hydroxychloroquine as a treatment, and initially she had one of her departments had sent out some guidance that said that they didn't recommend it for a treatment or something like that.
Facts and science, though, right?
It was bad, but not as bad as some people made it out to be. But it was not good. Okay, so Karen Whitsett has 3 primary challengers against her. Rosalind Ogburn filed on February 7th. And then 2 others, Nicole Elcock and Mark Cummings, filed.
Come on! Those have to be fake names. Elcock and Cummings?
Elcock and Cummings. Elcock and Cummings both filed on April 21st, which was the last day to file. Oh, here's interesting.
Wait, what was the first person's last name?
Okay, we've got Rosalind Ogburn.
Ogburn. Okay.
Yeah, Rosalind Ogburn.
Look, if your Cummings too hard, your Elcock might have Ogburn. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So we have Nicole Elcock and Mark Cummings competing with Rosalind Ogburn for the assault on Karen Whitsett.
Where is Whitsett a representative? Like, is this Detroit. This is a Detroit district? So,
yes,
theoretically,
primary Detroit, parts of Dearborn, but mostly Detroit.
I hate to ask, are either of the challengers minorities or are they white?
I have no idea.
Damn. Let's see. Nicole Elcock. Worst name I've ever seen.
I wouldn't expect any of them to have campaign websites up to shit, except maybe the one that filed early. And that would be Ogda, whatever it was. Hold on, I'm going back to look.
She doesn't have a photo.
Ogburn? I don't know.
Damn. Yeah, only Karen Whitsett on Ballotopedia has a photo.
Yeah, see, the problem is, well, it's not really a problem, but it's a matter of fact that you only have to file $100 to run for state house, so it's easy. So
based on nothing other than their names, who do you think gets the nod from the group that censured the no longer in favor Democrat woman?
Whoever the 13th Congressional District Committee decides.
Yeah, I'm saying, like, based on nothing other than their names, who do you pick? I pick Elcock. I think Elcock's got it.
Yeah. And why? Just out of curiosity, why do you say Elcock? I'll tell you why I think it, but why do you think it?
She's a woman and her last name, it has cock in it. That's why I picked it.
I was going to say because she's a woman and she filed later than the other one. So it's clearly a revenge filing, not a just want to go out and get him.
I think one thing that people might not understand, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but this is my feeling, is that there's a lot of insider talk that goes on. And if there was a viable candidate on the 21st, you would not see two people also filing on the last day saying, hey, that like there's something out there that has said that Ogburn was not necessarily ripe for the nod and that it is open for grabs between Cummings and Elcock. And so they filed it because if they have any competent campaign committee, they're going to say, look, Ogburn's already got the nod from the 13th district. You're not going to get any funding. It's going to be really hard to fight this campaign. Do you really want to try and unseat not only a sitting Democrat, but another Democrat who's filed back in February? Like, there's some research that's done on these things. So I think the fact that two people filed on the same day say that not only that Whitsett is vulnerable, but also that Ogburn is not necessarily the preferred nominee. That's my opinion.
Well, first of all, both of the parties do everything they possibly can to minimize primary challenges.
Right.
Because they're
damaging.
They're diverting resources from the general. And yeah, they could be damaging in the general.
Yep.
So right off the bat, everybody, no matter how crazy a politician is, the party will support that person if they're in the incumbent. Ordinarily, that's the way it goes. However, that standard can be rolled back a bit when they're in a, say, 80% Democrat seat, because they don't have any risk of being replaced by a Republican.
Right. The primary
to be selective.
The primary is the general. If you think you're going to automatically win the general election, the primary doesn't, like, you don't care if you burn each other down in the primary because the Republican's a joke.
Yeah, I'll give you a great example of this. There was a congressman from a blue collar district in Los Angeles, Miguel Contreras, and he was a pro-union voter almost all the time, but he voted no on one thing. I think it was, I don't know, it was card check or something, whatever it was.
Whoops, can't vote no on card check, though. That's the big one.
Well, whatever it was, he voted no on one thing. And so the unions ran a primary challenger against him, Hilda Solis. And the quote was, "This is a blue-collar union district. We expect champions, not people that will flake out."
Right.
Contreras wasn't 50%, 60%, 70% union guy. He was 90%, but we expect 100%.
Sure.
So they knocked him out in the primary, and they elected Hilda Solis. She became Obama's labor secretary.
There you go. That's
the way it goes.
Right, that's the reality. And a Detroit politician is, I mean, you're gonna get a Democrat in a Detroit district. Like you're just gonna.
Yeah.
You're not changing
the primary often is, I mean, that's why it's called the primary. It is the more important election most of the time.
Right.
In most districts.
Tess Not on Holiday says, if Governor Whitmer is a Nazi, does that make her sycophants Nazi sympathizers? I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Bad Dragonite says, shout out to Baldermort's Guide to Warhammer on YouTube. His newest project is a lengthy video on the deathcore of Krieg, featuring several Warhammer YouTubers, including Major Kill and Alpha Busa. Worth checking out for Warhammer 40k fans. If Major Kill is in, I'm in. I will also sleep with him. Malik, that was weird. Malik Foxon says, I'm an Uber Eats driver north of Austin. God damn it. Will you please drive me some Franklins from Austin to Minnesota? Most of the pickups I've gotten are actually not big chains. There's a lot of people out here supporting their local places, and I've been to many joints I've never been before COVID. Need more of that, in my opinion. Malik, two things about that. One, you are in a food diverse area with an iconic culinary scene. Austin, even north of Austin, whatever. It's all beautiful. You've got a lot of culinary diversity. Small towns, this is the one crippling factor. They really don't have it. They don't have it because smaller independent restaurants don't survive here. Chains do because of brand recognition alone. It's really weird, but it's how it kind of works in small towns. You got you might have a local independent place that does well, but the chains do well. And to give you an example, my town, you can go talk to 10 people in my town and ask them what good seafood is, and 9 of them at least will tell you Red Lobster. You open a Red Lobster in my town, you will do great. You open any other seafood in town, an independent seafood place, you will fail dramatically. I don't care if you're bringing in New York quality Michelin starred sushi with a fresh chef. You will not succeed, but you will kill it if you're a Red Lobster because of those stupid cheddar biscuits, which are damn good, by the way. But you'll kill it. That's just how small towns work. I don't know if Adam has a different perspective, but Austin cannot
Actually, I've been reflecting on the error I just made.
Oh, what's that?
Miguel Contreras wasn't the guy that Hilda Solis beat.
Oh no,
that was Marty Martinez. Contreras was the guy that delivered Martinez's scalp and said he was the one who said, "Here's why we whack this guy." So yeah, Marty Martinez. He was the mostly pro-labor congressman that got knocked out by Hilda Solis, who became labor secretary. So I was all focused on that, and I didn't even pay attention to what you were just saying just now. Sorry.
Don't worry about it.
Just wanted to correct the record. I don't want to be wrong about what I'm talking about. So
I appreciate it. I was just talking about how chain restaurants do really well in small towns when other restaurants struggle. The guy was he's a Uber Eats delivery driver in North Austin or north of Austin, Texas, which has a bustling culinary scene. But out here in the sticks, you don't typically have bustling culinary scenes. So you don't really see independent businesses doing great like you might in Austin, where you will have thousands of people who will support their local eateries. Here you just, if 1,000 people support it, that means everybody in the city supports it. And that's a hard call to make. So.
Well, like in my small town, I mean, everybody goes to McDonald's and Arby's at the drive-thru.
Yes.
But there's this local, well, we have these two, I don't know if you guys have these in Minnesota. We call them Coney Islands. Do you guys know what those are?
James Coney Island, the hot dog place?
They're like diners, basically. They're diners, but they're called Coney Island.
In Houston, they have James Coney Island. It's a hot dog chain. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's a Michigan thing. Coney's, they are places that serve these hot dogs with chili on them, but they're also just basically diners. Anyway, they're all over the place in Michigan. So we've got two in this town. One of them, famous Mile and Coney Island, just shut down completely. The other one, Brooklyn Sidetrack, open for carry out and delivery through some kind of service or whatever it is. And I go to that one, well, because that one's closed completely. But I don't want to use these brokerages. I don't want to support Uber. I don't want to pay money for the driver. So I go there and pick up my food. But almost nobody else does. They just don't. I mean, the fact is, because they're set up for drive-throughs, that's all the benefit they need. Mm-hmm. There's another place in Ann Arbor I'll deliberately go to because they have it's a bagel place called Bagel Friggle. They're really good. Anyway, I deliberately go there because I like them and I want them to succeed because they actually just lost their last place and they had just opened at this new location. And
I'm so mad.
I told them, I was like, I called them. I was like, are you guys delivering? They're like, no, but we're here. So I went there and I talked to the woman who ran the place. She said, this is the worst thing about this is time goes so slow every day. Getting one order an hour, it's just miserable. So I go out of my way to always go there as much as I can. It is so sad. And I don't want to support these profiteers of chaos, which include all these delivery services. I want to just give these restaurants my money. I mean, as it is, they've already lost everything. They've already lost all their employees. They're already devastated. They might not even be able to stay open at all. This place just opened. They'll be lucky if they can even stay in business. So,
I was at a place a couple weeks before quarantine. It's a local coffee shop. I think it's called Cafe, or it was called Cafe. And I went in there because I was supposed to get my wife a white chocolate mocha because she's a white girl from Caribou. Look, I'm not going to apologize for it. That's just what it is.
I didn't ask you to.
From Caribou Coffee. I don't like coffee. I hate the taste of coffee. I don't care if you like coffee. If you like coffee, that's all to you. I'm never going to preach against it. I wish I could like coffee. She likes white chocolate mochas from Caribou Coffee, which is a Minnesota-based chain. They just have, it's better than a Starbucks white chocolate mocha. Why? I don't know. I'm not a coffee drinker. Anyway, I was in town and I forgot to stop at the Caribou. So I stopped at the local place to get a white chocolate mocha for her. And I was like, this place used to be called Cafe, but it's not called Cafe anymore. It was like El Cafe, which is weird. And I go in and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to start serving homemade Mexican food in a week. And I'm like, what? This town of 1,500 people is going to get some abuelitas to cook some like homemade Mexican food. I'm going to get tortas and fajitas and carnitas, all like freshly made by actual legit short, fat Mexican grandmothers. Like, this is heaven. This is not a big chain. These are actual Mexican ladies who are going to cook food. And it's 2 minutes from my house. I'm like, yes! And then Corona hits. And I don't even know if they're open. I don't know if they're going to survive. And I'm like, all I want is to go get taquitos from legit Mexican ladies. That's all I want in my life, is to go do that right by my house. And this virus has shattered my dreams.
Did you call them? They said they're not serving. They're not doing anything.
I haven't checked yet. But they were waiting on their. They just gotten their permit, so they were waiting on actual equipment to come in, and then coronavirus struck. So I have no idea if they're even open. I don't know. Yeah. Life ruined. Why even live? Yes. Thank you. One of my best friends growing up was. His mom was from Guadalajara, Mexico, and she would always make me food. And his dad, who unfortunately passed away of cancer, really great guy, he would always make fun of how slow I ate. So that was the dynamic we had. His mom would make me homemade Mexican food, and his dad would make fun of me as a homemade old Mexican man with cancer. And all I want in my life is homemade Mexican food. to come back. Like, I want to be able to go and get that.
Well, I'm firmly in favor of belittling slow eaters.
Yeah, I've always been. I talk. Shocker. I talk too much while I eat, so I just don't eat.
I talk too, but I get the food put away.
I talk before eating.
Otherwise, you're holding people up. That's just not cool.
I talk before eating, not after eating. Okay, let me move on because I'm taking too much time on this. Architect of Fate says he called it Minnesota. Minnesota died after the Syrian refugee crisis. Now it can only be correctly referred to as Little Somalia. Bow down to your mullahs before Sharia is enforced by law. Maybe COVID can fix it. Damn.
If that's your attitude, you're all done for, because that's happening to all of us sooner or later. No. Stand and fight.
Stand and fight. I agree. Stand and fight. Fight for our things. Remember, people are coming here. They can assimilate to our way of life. We don't have to assimilate to theirs. And if your politician demands that you assimilate to other people and gets rid of the melting pot, put them in a melting pot of tar and then cover them with feathers. Tibby Tail McKitty says, I scored a bottle of Buffalo Trace. Hey, good job. Jason of the Great Awakening says, plot twist. Been finding papers and articles going back to 2005 so far on the usage and efficacy of HCQ for coronaviruses by teams led by Dr. Fauci. Very cool. Yeah, I think the other coronavirus, like that's why they picked the HCQ as a cure, is because it works on other coronaviruses. I think that was the implication. But Redhead Jedi says, love what you're doing. Love to stay and watch, but I need to work soon. Love you guys. Hey, no problem. Thanks for stopping by. Also, I'm very glad that you still have work, and I hope all of you either still have work or are back to work soon. Wesley Reed says, speaking of Illinois, our governor's wife broke the lockdown. That was hilarious. By the way, have you seen have you seen a sandwich that the Illinois governor wouldn't eat? I've never encountered a sandwich that man couldn't eat. That is a big dude.
Well, to be fair, I've never encountered a sandwich I wouldn't eat, but
yeah, but have you encountered 50 sandwiches that you wouldn't eat? Because I'm pretty sure that the Illinois governor could put down literally any number of sandwiches.
Yeah, he's got a problem.
He's a large man.
He's a tyrant.
Let's see. Where was that? Oh, yeah. So the governor's wife broke the lockdown. That was hilarious. And then he's like, you're attacking my wife. Wives are supposed to be off limits. Like, that's not... Your wife isn't being targeted. The fact that she broke your order is.
Yeah.
That makes him a simp, right? He's a simp automatically.
Well, he's a hypocrite. That's the more important point.
I don't like hypocrite. I want simp or cuck ruling on the Illinois governor. Can we get a simp or cuck ruling?
You got to message to your targets, man. Your targets are these swing voters. You can't say he's a simp. You got to say he's a hypocrite.
I'm going to say that swing... Would you...
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be a buzzkill. I know, because I know you got this running joke going. But I got to repeat this because there's a real problem on our side that we don't message smartly on these issues.
What if we call him a sympacrite?
I love it.
Okay, perfect. That's Shinku Toner. Shinku Toner has got it. He's a sympacrite. Not only is he a hypocrite, but he's simping for his wife, who we know is not giving him sexual favors in return. And he's also a cuck because he's watching. Never mind. He's watching another man eat a sandwich. That's all I'm saying.
It works because it's original, and you tag him with that first, and it'll percolate through all the other sympacrites going around in the Democrat Party.
Sympacrites are canon. We're now in it. American government makes sympacrites spread far and wide. Okay, so did Chicago's mayor. Just let our state collapse. We'll build something better. Yeah, of course. Of course.
No, don't buy into that. This whole idea of the pendulum will swing back farther if only it just crashes through more stuff in the first. No, it does not work that way.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about of course they broke the lockdown. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the state collapse being of course they broke the lockdown. They don't actually care about anybody's safety. I have to put this out there, and you've implied this without saying it. It's political. That's the problem. All of this is politics. All of the regulation, all of everything is political. They're not really interested in yours or any other safety on the planet. They just want to politic you and get your vote. This is the way they think they will maximize their power, maximize their exposure, and then therefore maximize their voting turnout. That's it. That's the calculation that they've run. You have to make them wrong. You have to make them wrong.
Yep.
Synapse says the worst thing about COVID is that it got political. I agree. It is much worse than it feels, but it doesn't justify authoritarianism. And that combination isn't even acknowledged most of the time. Nope, it can't justify authoritarianism, because if it does, then we don't have freedom. Malachi, the only constitutional restriction on freedom, by the way, there are constitutional restrictions on freedom. Insurrection, rebellion, and a foreign invader waging war on our shores. That's it. That's literally the only crisis our founding fathers said this would be bad enough where we have to suspend the rights of our people. Insurrection, rebellion, or a foreign army at the gates. We've never had a foreign army at the gates. We've barely had anything even close to an insurrection or rebellion. The only thing that qualifies is the Civil War. Asians in World War II don't qualify. None of that. It's literally the Civil War is it. Other than that, we've never had. Well, I mean, I guess we had the Mexican-American War and stuff like that, but Texas wasn't even part of America when the major bulk of the war was going on. So we've never really had the threat of an army reaching our shores in any meaningful way, where the U.S. is threatened. We've had U.S. territories threatened, but we've never had it. And illness just isn't on there.
The impeachment of Trump, that might qualify for an insurrection.
Well, but you're talking about
I'm being facetious. I know.
No, you're talking about a different phase, like that. The impeachment of Trump may spark an insurrection, which I agree. Impeachment is very dangerous, and we didn't really acknowledge that very much with his impeachment. But it's a scary proposition. Anyway, let's move on. Yeah. Malachi Tomlinson says a Kansas judge has ruled requiring proof of citizenship to vote unconstitutional, despite that ruling running contrary to the Constitution. Fishy.
Oh.
Yeah. Hopefully he'll get overturned in appeals. Cars in Depth says, I'm one of Michigan's worst COVID zip codes. Michiganders are ignoring the governor, so are the police. Was heavy cruising on Woodward with spectators Sunday. I don't even know what that means, but I assume it means driving around.
Wait. Say again.
They were heavy cruising on Woodward with spectators Sunday.
Okay, so Woodward Ave is a main artery into Detroit. That's where the Woodward Dream Cruise is. Big auto show. So he's saying they were showing off that they were flouting the order. Is that what he was saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So was he wearing a mask?
No, he's saying that let's see. He's in the worst Michigan zip code for COVID. And he's saying that Michiganders and the police are ignoring the governor's order, which is, I think that's good. That's good.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
okay. So what's the problem?
No, he wasn't making an argument. He's just stating. It's a good thing.
Cool.
It's just saying, hey, freedom's out. Good. Kidda says the Kiwi Farms thread on WooFlu is a gold mine of info. Often 2 to 6 weeks before the mainstream media gets it. CDC US death numbers are faked, are lumping in presumed cases. Be scared. Ooh. Gospel of Comics says, Rackets, can I get you to say, I'm Sketch in your Vic voice? You're the best. Let me just say, I love all of you. I wish you the best during the coronavirus. I hope you're staying safe. I've gotten a fan request to say a particular line, so I hope you'll bear with me on that. I'm Sketch. There you go. Thank you, guys. Hope you're staying safe and healthy during coronavirus. There you go. There's my Vic voice for you. I hope that was sufficient. Troll Mageddon says PTI referred to the channel. I'm currently being sued by a popular sneaker shop, suing me for filming them failed to detect fake shoes on YouTube. Is there any way I can contact you with the question? You can email me. I can't guarantee any help. I can try and give you an opinion, but that's about it. Bill Stone says, had a job interview today for a higher money job, but don't really want to leave the current company. Drinking Gentleman Jack to drown my moral dilemmas. Gentleman Jack is the only Jack that I'll approve of. Interview was by video conference, so I wore no pants because screw pants. At a boy. I never wear pants anymore. I'm just naked from the waist down from now on. Short round says, fun fact, police can just not enforce stupid laws. Happens daily. Also, why is a guillotine on the governor's lawn? Make politicians headless again. There you go. Some nobody says Adolf nationalized healthcare and aborted the unwanted. DCV Titan says Mastodon was created by some snowflakes that thought the right was going to take over Twitter. Now the right uses Mastodon and the left weeps. That's funny. Austin Heartless says, I want Michigan to open back up. My roommate was working from home is driving me nuts. Yes. I could not imagine having a roommate, much less one that works from home. I feel like there would be some domestic violence. DCV Titan says, there was a lineup last time I went to Walmart in my town. Population maybe 18,000. Not sure if they were limiting or making people use sanitizer. The only line I've had to stand in so far was I went to a Chinese restaurant in my town, and they are not good in general at takeout or delivery. Like oftentimes you'll show up to pick up. They're like, oh yeah, 20 minute. And you show up in 20 minute to pick up your takeout and it's just not ready. And they're like, oh, we didn't start it. You sit down. And that's awful. But so that was the only line I stood in, but I hate lines. Some nobody says also use mail a letter plus com, really easy to use. So mailaletter.com, I think is what he's saying. Really easy to use. Skeetney says Texas belongs to Oklahoma and it's a fact. No, it isn't. Stop it. Stop it. Actually, that's an interesting thing, an interesting topic. I don't know if you know about the Texas has a provision in their treaty where they can split into 4 distinct territories. Are you familiar with that, at least on a facial level?
No. Okay.
I argue that Texas has already split into its 4 distinct territories. Because like Colorado was part of the Texas acquisition, stuff like that. It's an interesting question. Gengio says, screw you, rackets. White chocolate mocha is delicious, and I'm a 6'4" man with a beard. Look, I don't care if you like a white girl drink. I don't drink anything coffee. Look, I can't even drink Baileys. I can't even drink something spiked with Baileys because I hate coffee that much. The coffee flavor, it's my grandparents' fault because they all drank coffee and I hated the smell, and I can't get over it because I'm a jackass. It's not you, it's me. Backgoat says drunken Adam equals big brain panel worthy. That's good. They say you're worthy.
I'll take it.
You're worthy of being on a big brain panel. Truck and Bear says Gallup, New Mexico isn't messing around with their situation. Police at every exit with what looks like trailers being used for mobile medical checkpoints. This is nuts. I agree. Austin Heartless says, adding to my earlier super chat, I'm still going to work 6 days a week. Well, you are essential, buddy. Whether or not your job is, I don't know, but you are. And finally, Night of Hobeck says, now that you say that, it reminds me that I feel bad for not supporting my local Chinese restaurant, but I, no joke, went on a diet right before all this started, and I'm doing too well on it to order out now. Down a good 60-something pounds. Congratulations, buddy. Keep it up. Andrew War Snowboard says, hashtag white girls F naughty dogs. Come on now. And Robert Hubert says, how about that CPD Lightfoot Beetlejuice threatening to shut us down, cite us, and put us in jail? I have no idea what CPD means. Is that Chicago Police Department?
That was my best guess.
I don't know. The question with any civil disobedience is it is still disobedience. You should always expect to go to jail for your civil disobedience.
Don't ever quote Maddox. Ever.
I'm sorry, but
ever.
He's quoting someone else.
Yeah.
And it is true. Not that it should be, but it is. You should always expect to go to jail when you're engaging in civil disobedience. Actually, I can change this quote. What's his name? What's my guy's name? Just a second. Let me Google it, because blank think without. It's what's his name? Malcolm Gladwell. I thought about it before I saw it. You'll have to just trust me on Malcolm Gladwell. He was he the
guy from Clockwork Orange?
No, I don't think so. Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, I know.
He's written a couple.
Malcolm.
He's written a couple really good books. Outliers and What the Dog Saw are the ones I've read. David and Goliath I've read snippets of, which is great. And he has a podcast about it's called Revisionist History. And as much as that sounds like a cuck thing, it's not. It's about just looking at any historical event, even if it was a couple weeks ago to several thousand years ago, with the information we have now, which is a great thing to do. And he talked about in Revisionist History about this idea that where was I? Where was it? Oh yeah.
Malcolm Gladwell.
I'm trying to think of what I thought about it. Damn it! No.
You had an idea.
Damn you, Mictors! What was I talking about? Oh, the Maddox quote, right? The Maddox quote. Civil disobedience.
Yeah.
He was talking about protests at universities. Specifically at Stanford, they're protesting the Woodrow Wilson Library because Woodrow Wilson, newsflash, was a horrific racist. Woodrow Wilson was terrible. Actually brought the Klan back to the United States and actually segregated the military after it had been desegregated. Woodrow Wilson, terrible president. But Stanford has a library named after Woodrow Wilson. And
it brings up a moral question: is do you defend Woodrow Wilson, who was a disgusting human being anyway, only because it's not fair that these people destroy his legacy?
Yeah, well, I don't.
He was terrible all by himself.
To be fair, I think they should absolutely keep the name the Woodrow Wilson Library. I don't care.
Yeah, I agree too.
I think he was a terrible president, but that doesn't mean that other people don't think he was a good one. So, if it were up to me, everything would be Calvin Coolidge College. Literally every institution in the United States would be Calvin Coolidge University, Calvin Coolidge College.
Really?
I like Coolidge. He's my man.
I'm more of a Grover Cleveland man myself.
That's fine. We can have an even split between Coolidge and Cleveland.
All right.
Oh man, I've got something for you. Hold on.
I'll cut that.
This is cool. I'll be right back. This is completely unrelated to the show.
Uh-oh. I have no idea what's coming, folks.
Never mind. I'm wholly embarrassed. That was That was President Garfield, not Grover Cleveland. I'm not even going to talk about it. Okay. Anyway. No.
All right.
But his point in the podcast, which was great, he's talking about these people protesting at Stanford, and his question to them was, "Why don't you leave the school?" And they're like, "Well, because I'm at Stanford." And he says, "Leave the school. If you're not willing to leave the school, then you don't actually care about the disobedience, because you're not being disobedient. The modern protesters want the protest, but they're unwilling to accept the consequences of the protest that make it worth protesting." I mean, I would wager that the people who showed up with guns at the Michigan protest were expecting that they might be told to go home or told to be arrested, right? Or been arrested, right?
That's... Yeah, but I don't know that it's reasonable for to say that people at college who say we disapprove of this building quit the college if you don't agree with the naming of the building.
It was the question. That. It was not just that. It was that they were unwilling. They didn't believe they should go to jail over a sit-in. They didn't believe that any negative consequence would happen. What this person did was she went into the board of Stanford, which is a bunch of white old men, because Stanford is still Stanford, and yelled at them. And then they said, we don't see it the same way. And then she was mad that they didn't do anything. And he's like, there's no expectation of sacrifice. Not saying that she should be arrested, but that this person needs to be prepared to face the consequences of civil disobedience. Otherwise, they're just yelling. And just yelling is fine, but it won't get it. You've got a bunch of people who are looking at you going, you're not even willing to accept the wrongness of your actions. And I go back to Gandhi protesting in India, when the peaceful resistance of Gandhi was to walk up to the people saying, you can't come in here because you're lower class or whatever. And they would walk up expecting to get hit, by the baton. And they would get hit, and they would go to the back of the line and go back to get hit again. And eventually the guy swinging the baton would realize that he's hitting people who aren't doing anything to him. And that was part of the civil disobedience, was the idea of the punishment being so ludicrously disproportionate to the protest that people go, wait a minute now. You can't just hit people. You can't just lock people in prison. You can't just do this. That's what makes it impactful. Otherwise, you're just someone complaining like me, like just some jackass on the internet.
Yeah, but these are two separate issues. You have a right to complain. You have a right to protest. There's nothing wrong with that. The question is, if you are disobeying, then who is harmed by that? What is the consequence of that?
I think the point of the disobedience is to show the public how ridiculous the punishment is for the infraction, right? Like, if you're gonna go to your Capitol building, just as a normal person, like, I'm gonna show up at the Capitol and they pepper spray you. And the next person shows up and they pepper, like, you aren't screaming at them and calling, you're not threatening or throwing bottles.
No, don't do that. It's a bad idea.
Well, obviously.
It doesn't work, and it doesn't prove anything, because all you're doing is making trouble for the purpose of getting beat for no other reason. That's not there's ways that the civil disobedience that ought to happen is disobeying the governor's orders, not through protesting.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the people who showed up to business. Like, imagine the people who showed up to Michigan, the protests, they all got pepper sprayed. Even though they were peaceful, there was no violation of law, they all get pepper sprayed. That sends a message, right? And I think those people were willing to be peppered. They don't want it, but they're willing to be there and face the consequences of their action. And there is a business owner.
But let's be happy that it didn't come to that.
Yes.
It didn't.
Yes, That's agree.
Great.
I agree. The thing is, when Malcolm interviewed the girl at Stanford, she wasn't willing to face any consequence at all. Like, that was the thing. I think, if I don't remember precisely, but there was something like, well, they offered her to stop protesting or she'd be expelled, and she chose to stop protesting, type thing. It's like, well, wait a minute. Like, you want to protest, but you don't want the not even the actual cost, the potential cost. And I saw the guy opened his tattoo shop. I think it was down in Austin or Dallas or something like that. And he's being led away in handcuffs. That's a powerful statement. All this guy did was open his business. And when they came to arrest him, did he shut it down? He said, no, I think I have a right to do my business. They said, we're going to arrest you. We're going to bring you out of here in handcuffs. We're going to take you to jail. And he says, here you go. Take me to jail. I'm peaceful. All I want to do is respect. So,
cheers to him. Cheers to him. And that is the most powerful thing. There's actually there's a great article about this in The Worst Place. And The Worst Place, I mean, dailycost.com. It's a commie punk website.
How dare you mention that on my stream? You now have to free Tibet yourself, which means you have to cross your legs and light yourself on fire, sir.
Well, let me tell you why. Let me tell you why I bring this up. It's this article, and this is from a guy who had no intention of serving our arguments making this post. Mm-hmm. But the headline, the title of the column, this is from August 2011, and the headline was, "Most of you have no idea what Martin Luther King actually did," and he really makes the argument for what Martin Luther King actually did, which serves as a role model for, in a way, for what's happening right now. And here's the point he makes. He's a he is a black radical, a young black radical that got radicalized at college.
Yeah.
And he comes home from his professors filled with these ideas about how Martin Luther King was a lousy moderate. The real heroes were Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey and these hardcore and
the ones,
these hardcore
the ones
guys
calling for death. Okay, I got it.
But he comes from a black family that had been in terrible conditions and subject to terrible oppression. And his father, with kind of this cold, as he said, with the cold fury, says to him, Martin Luther King ended the reign of terror in the South. So don't complain to me about what he didn't do and tell me how great the others were. And he explains. And I'm going to actually just read the article at this point.
Okay.
I'm with it. He says, everybody says Martin Luther King gave this great speech, or they say he marched. And that's the conventional wisdom, is that that's what MLK did. He said, I have a dream. And he led these marches. And he says, no, that's not what MLK actually did. That's what his father had to explain to him after he had been led by his professors to think, no, he was some weak moderate. It was really the radicals that were doing the hard stuff. He says, no, it wasn't that black people had to use a separate drinking fountain or couldn't sit at lunch counters or to sit at the back of the bus. That was not the main thing that was a problem for black Americans. It was that occasionally a white person would go berserk and grab them and lynch them and get away with it. And there was this constant fear among black men and black people in general that you would never know when you'd be tried or convicted for crimes that you couldn't possibly be guilty. Right. But it would happen with the willing participation of complacent others. They would be accused of assault, which could be anything from rape to not taking off someone's hat to reckless eyeballing. And so there was this constant fear. And that was the climate of fear that Dr. King ended. He said, you have to just, whatever you're most afraid of, just go ahead and do it. Go down to City Hall, register to vote. If they say no, do it anyway. You have to take your name down. Go ahead, sit at the lunch counter, sue the local school board. All the things that most black people would have said back then, without exaggeration, were stark, raving insane, would get you killed. If we all do it, it'll be okay. They made black people experience the worst of the worst collectively that white people could dish out and discover it wasn't that bad. They taught them how to take a beating from the cops, from the dogs, from the fire department hoses. They actually coached young people how to crouch, cover their heads with arms, take the beating, how to go to jail. And what they ended up finding out was the worst of the worst wasn't that bad. And when they were singing freedom songs from jail, when they said, we don't care how much you're oppressing us, we're still going to resist. That was what MLK did. And that was what broke the oppression of the South, the terrorism of the South. And nobody else did that.
Sure.
So think about that, the heroism and the fear really is. But what's it going to take to overcome this climate of total too many people in your restaurant and they'll shut us down and win? But the fact is, if people don't start overtly resisting and standing up to this crazy tyranny, it will become permitted to become the new normal. And we have to stop this from becoming the allowed normal.
We do. We really do. That's the thing that I don't know if people are getting. This is not what they're doing. It's not a conspiracy, okay? It's not like a plan. If we normalize to this as the new normal, and you'll see that in several publications, the new normal with quarantine. If we allow the new normal to actually be the new normal, it will literally be the new normal. Governors.
By the way, this was in the House Republicans' plan, in their draft plan. The plan they were using to oppose the governor. Yeah. Literally, it said phase 1 was this, phase 2 is this, phase 3 was after the vaccine is created, they actually said return to the new normal. Return to the new normal. That was in there.
That's the Republicans, y'all. This isn't a thing about like conspiracy or wildness. There are people who are resigning themselves to the new normal of you being 6 feet away from your neighbor, of there being strictly enforced limits on how many people are in Walmart, of shortages of things that were never short before, because if Walmart had extra meat, they just threw it away. Because we're a first world country, not a third world country, and it's okay. We have another cow. It's okay to throw part of the cow away. We've got a lot more where that came from. That's the benefit of being America, is that we do have this excess. We've built it. There are people who are resigning themselves to staying away from it. That's the problem. And the only way to avoid the new normal of being literally this is to stand up against it. It's going to take people saying, like, do you want to go to a barber? Do you want to go to a barber? This is a weird fucking question. Do you want to go to a barber or a masseuse or a chiropractor? Like, the new normal is them not existing. And we have to actually say, no, I legit want Sancho to cut my hair. I want that to happen. I want Tina at Great Clips to cut my hair. I want that to happen. I want to be able to go in and just get a haircut. I don't want a special procedure. I don't want to douse myself in sanitizer. I just want to go in, sit down on the fucking bench because I just got off work and I happen to have 15 extra minutes and I want to wait and get a haircut. That's not the new normal. That's the old normal. And we need to go back to that because that is freedom.
And we're not going to be able to settle for less than that, because that's what the politicians want, is some kind of compromise where, oh, sure, some of us can go back to work, but, you'll never go to a concert ever again because you can never get close to another human the way we used to.
Yeah.
And that's just terrifying. That is just morally reprehensible and disgusting, this notion that we can't ever be close. But that's good. Mark my words. That is what they want to persist. The virus, we'll get over it. The economy might recover. But beating social distancing, that will be here for years to come unless it is attacked and defeated. We will never have a normal where we can be close again.
Exactly.
That is intolerable.
And also,
unless we allow it to be.
If you're under 18, stay away from tattoo artist Romeo Lacoste. That guy's disgusting. Let me read last couple super chats, then we'll wrap it up. Dave94 says, oh wait, no. Romeo Garbo, damn it, says Canada is just northern Minnesota. That's true. Wesley Reed says in Lemon voice, he's a sympacrite through and through. A virus sympathizer and a pound me too apologist. This has been a Lemons Public Health Update. Thank you and good night to all the conslutes. Dave94 says, Nick, I finally get to watch you live. Hope everything is going fine for you. It is, brother. Just came to send you some Mexican pesos. Oh my God. I was talking about how much I want to eat some homemade Mexican food right now. I'm going to make some carnitas. I bought a pork shoulder and I'm going to fucking smoke it tomorrow. Some nobody says also their normal stays the same. Ours doesn't. That's true. Romeo Garbo says we must water the tree of liberty with tyrant's blood. American Revolution 2, electric boogaloo, baby. Donut Swan says the amount of tyranny in any society is the exact amount that is tolerated. That's true. That is a true statement. Bad Dragonite says security guard here. We hate taking temps as much as, if not more, than you hate having temps taken. Stay 6 feet away, but let me get 1 inch from you for an accurate reading. And then he follows up with the left has made protests ineffective via overuse. I agree. Night of Hopex says, hey guys, all well and good. You want to take the hit to protest in a civilized Western society. Don't try that once Stalinism prevails. If you line up to protest the people who want to put you in a gulag and work you to death, chances are that won't work. Yes, protest now while protesting is a thing. Protesting later is death.
And by the way, protesting is not normally a technique that I would encourage. That's not the way it usually works. Most of the time, protests, politicians just ignore them completely. Because they look at them and they're like, they're either on our side or the other side. They're not in play. They're not in our district. They're probably spending a lot of time doing this and organizing this. It doesn't register for them. It was different this time because that event on April 15th broke the spell. It snapped people out of it because we've all been in this state of shock that in a flash, in a snap of the finger, in a heartbeat, our liberties were just destroyed. Yeah, and that broke the dam on the acceptance of that just being totally okay. I mean, there have been these incidents, and I remember the first one that really struck me was in 2016 when Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, refused to endorse Donald Trump, Republican nominee for president. And the reason why that was striking was because never would the Speaker of the House of the party not endorse his own party's nominee for president, because his job is to elect Republicans to maintain the majority. It was crazy. It was, and the amazing thing was how unthinkable it was that nobody was calling that out. Like, this is crazy. This is bizarre. This is outrageous. Why on earth would the Republican Speaker of the House not endorse the Republican nominee? And yet nobody talked about it. It's one of those incidents where just in an instant, the things that everybody would assume was just the way things go doesn't happen, and nobody says anything. Nobody complains about it. And there have been more of these crazy incidents where just whole paradigms of things you would expect would be established just don't work that way anymore. And that happened again with the pandemic. Just all of a sudden, oh, boom, your civil liberty's gone.
Where did Paul Ryan go? I've never even heard of him anymore. He was like on track to be president, like legitimately, and he's fucking gone.
Yeah, he retired.
Good job. Good.
Yeah.
Get out.
Yeah. Bye. But all the same, I mean, that's one of those things where, we have these expectations as a society that, you get to be the Speaker of the House from an understanding of all of your colleagues, that your job is to be the supporter of the ticket. And somehow, overnight, instantaneously, with no explanation, it became okay to not support the ticket, not support the guy at the top of the ticket. And even crazier, nobody calls that out. Nobody's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, the Republican Speaker of the House, didn't endorse the Republican nominee for president? Nobody said anything. That's one of those moments when you realize
thing Trump voters have to remember today is that was the reason I didn't vote for Trump. Is I thought I voted for me. I didn't vote for Hillary. Listen, I voted for me with Snowden as my running mate. I didn't vote for Trump because I said this guy is a scary, dangerous authoritarian. He is going to take the reins of power in ways that I'm scared of. He's going to suppress free speech. Yeah. He's going to suppress journalism. Turns out the reality is Trump didn't suppress journalism in any meaningful way. All he did was argue with journalists. I fucking love it. I love that.
I missed on the Trump train. Same reason as you. I had hesitations. I thought sooner or later he's going to do something that I'm going to not be able to abide by. Never happened. Never happened. But
not once has this man taken power at all the times, even where I think he should take power. I wanted him, by the way, when the Hawaii circuit judge said, no, we're going to put an injunction on his immigration order. I wanted Trump, with all of my boner, to furlough every FAA employee in Hawaii. I wanted him to shut the state down. I wanted him to say, hey, okay, fine. Deal without you can't have tourism because you don't have any air traffic controllers in Hawaii. Screw you. That's what I wanted. He didn't even do it then.
Yeah, he's been remarkably lousy on immigration policy, unfortunately.
I don't think he's been lousy. He's been surprisingly...
What happened to that executive order he was supposed to sign on anchor babies?
He's been surprisingly timid and reserved on it. And I actually respect that personally. He talked a lot about it.
But what's it gotten him? They still call him a Nazi.
I don't think it's gotten him anything. But see, that's why I like it. Because he could have gone, okay, you're going to call me Nazi anyway. I'm going to ramp up to 11, and he didn't. I think he's overly respected the position of the presidency. And to the point where I hope he gets a second term, and I hope he gets to push it a little further. That's what I want him to do. Because he didn't do it in his first term, and I respect that. He's converted me from a guy who would have never voted for him to a guy who will vote for him in 2020 only because he didn't become what I thought he would be.
Yep.
And that's great.
That's true. Yeah, he has resisted the dictatorial impulses that, on the other hand, our terrible governor has given herself into.
Exactly.
Actually, not giving herself into is not the right word.
Imagine when
pushed for.
When frumpy Governor Tim Walz is more of a tyrant than Donald fucking Trump. That is mind blowing. Of course I'll vote for him. I'll vote for Trump and not Walz.
Yeah, but getting back to that point though earlier about when I was talking about how crazy it was what happened with the nomination. The point being, it's incredible with this coronavirus stuff that just snap, liberty's gone instantaneously. That's normal, and nobody reacts to that with the extreme outrage that matches the extremity of the action.
Yeah.
People should be shocked. They should be furious. They should be in emergency mode right now. And it's hard to get people to that point.
Everybody's so scared of the virus that they're not being afraid of their government. And they really the longer term detriment, by the way, is your government. Chances are
it's also just inertia. How do you go from 0 to 1,000? Well, 1 minute, we had a nice policy discussion about what's right and wrong. Suddenly, now our liberty's off the table.
The weird odds are that many of you, if not most of you, have actually come into contact with coronavirus and either been infected and are asymptomatic, or had an infection and were mildly symptomatic because you're young, or had the contact and it didn't transmit to you. One of those three things has likely happened to everybody in this chat. That's the crazy thing about this, is that most of you have been healthy through all of this. Almost all of you have probably come into contact at some point with coronavirus. and you've weathered it. That's the crazy outcome. That's really, really unfortunate. And we don't have the test to verify it. But when we do, if you decide to submit to government testing, you'll probably find a very unlikely amount of corona antibodies inside of you already. And there's probably less to be scared of than you think. Okay, last super chat, and then let's end this stream. Nova Zero says protest is nothing without disobedience. Disobedience is nothing without consequence. Protesting and disobeying now is cheap. Waiting only makes it more expensive. Is that right? Wouldn't know. AU is a federated penal colony. Look, no, you've got it. The meaning behind protest is the risk that you will be punished for the protest. If you didn't have any risk, you don't have any punishment. And then it doesn't have any actual meaning. Because look, we can all say please and thank you. The scary thing is not saying please and thank you when it becomes illegal to do so. So anyway, Adam, is there any last words you want to say? Otherwise, I'm going to shut this damn thing down.
No, man, I've been going on all night, so I've covered as much as I wanted to. I am all set. And thank you for having me back on. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, man, I'm glad to have you back on. You're a great guest, and I was glad to be able to talk some Michigan-specific stuff with you, buddy. So, I hope we make even more trouble for next time because, hey, it's fun living in a swing state, right? Exactly. I hope my state my state has never been a swing state. We were the only state against Reagan in '84. The only one who did it. You guys got some work cut out for you. But if you would just hang on for just a little bit, I'd like to say goodbye to my guests off stream. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I hope you guys have a great night. And again, this is just stuff to think about as you observe this, and know that this is most important notes from tonight. This is all political. It's really all political. It's not about your health. It never has been, and it most importantly is not now about your health. And as we go forward, it will continue to be less and less about your health. And the other thing is, you do have power, but it is at the local level. And that's a scary thing because local politicians are weird. If you've ever talked to one, they're weirdos. There's nothing you can do about that. Okay, Niaz says, rip
there all are things you can do about that, and that's replace them.
Niaz says, rip all of Adam's points eaten by the YouTube void. Look, they should actually show up when YouTube processes the video. If they don't, I have a full recording of everything. Yeah. Please let me know. Malik Foxon says, to strengthen your point, Nick, remember I'm an Uber Eats driver. Been to many restaurants with several people in them, to many people's houses, still not showing symptoms. Really hope I haven't made anyone sick unknowingly. Don't worry about that. One, you probably haven't. Two, it's not your responsibility if you did. We are not responsible for the viruses we spread. We're really not, because we don't. Oftentimes you spread a virus without knowing you're actually infected. That's the most dangerous point in time. All right, guys. Hope you have a good night. Peace. Peace.